All right, people, welcome back once again. This is one of my first 2-in-1 recording session days, but we are also live here. Welcome back to the Black Muze Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muse. I have once again my very special guest, a person that I met on Clubhouse and who agreed to do this with me and who's been recording with me for hours and hours and has not got tired yet. She goes by Chica, but she also goes by, I want to say, Ezinwanyi. And without further ado, here she is.
Good
Did I say that right? I
job.
did it right. I said it right. I said it right. All right. Welcome back. You haven't ran yet. It's been hours. How you doing?
I haven't. Thank you for having me. I'm good. I'm
You good?
chilling. Let's
You
do
chilling?
this. Great
Are you?
conversation. So
Yeah, we've been having some great. We've been talking about all kinds of cancelable things,
yes,
things that can get you
bring on
canceled.
the cancellations.
You trying to get my show canceled before it even gets off the ground?
No,
I think that's what you're trying to do. You're getting real controversial right now. And we're about to do it again because we're about to talk about that controversial Matt Walsh Daily Wire documentary entitled "What Is a Woman?" Are you excited?
I am. Are there any words that we're not allowed to say that Because I really don't want you to be like canceled or demonetized or anything like that.
No, I don't censor people on my show. But what I do ask is that we keep it respectful, which you've been doing. But no, there's no words that we're not allowed to say.
Okay.
If I get canceled, I get canceled. What they'll probably do is demonetize a particular video, but I haven't even earned the right to make money on YouTube yet because I don't have enough views.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not even there yet. But whatever, I'm not gonna censor myself because I want to actually like talk about these things in an authentic way. So um without further ado, let's get into it. So the Matt Walsh Daily Wire documentary entitled "What Is a Woman?" This is the fourth part. This is the fourth time I've actually had a deep dive episode about it because there's so much to
That's your
unpack
mic?
about it. And well, I mean, talking about it with different people, you bring out different things, you
Yeah,
emphasize
yeah.
different
I know.
things.
I'm joking.
So it's giving me an opportunity to talk about a whole bunch of things and come at it from different angles and stuff like that. Every single person who's talked about it with me so far has been more right of center. So I'm trying to get some leftists on here to discuss it. I think that conversation will go a lot different. And me
I
playing
think you're
devil's
right of
advocate,
center and just don't want to admit it. But go off.
me,
Yeah.
not really. I'm pretty much in the. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know if I lean more right than I lean left. That's actually an open question. But it's not quite right to call me right or left. Although when I do play devil's advocate, I get accused by whoever of being that thing. So apparently, I'm convincing
Do you ever
whoever.
play devil's advocate in favor of the right?
Yeah, every time I'm on with leftists, which
Oh,
is
so
what I
they
was what I
accuse
was
you
trying to
of
say.
oh,
That's what I
okay.
was trying to say. Is it was once I get a
Okay.
leftist on, then I'll probably be able to get to voice like the conservative perspective, and that'll
Mm,
be fun.
that would be.
Uh, right. We need to find some leftists that can come on my show. I got one, but she doesn't want to talk about that though. She wants to do the
Interesting.
current events thing, but I'm gonna try to convince her to do it because I think it's gonna be awesome. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
would.
Anyway, what is a woman? This is you are the first woman host other than the former co-host I used to have on my the older version of this show. Uh to talk
What
that
an
I've had to
honor.
talk to in general, but also to talk about this. So I'm just gonna pose the question to you: What is a woman in your view?
A woman is an adult human female that was born with female reproductive organs.
Okay, that's your stance.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's definitely the conclusion that the documentary comes to, and there's this kind of interesting part where Matt Walsh goes home after his long journey of searching for the truth about the vexing question in
Sorry, one
2022
more thing.
of what is a
One more.
woman. Go ahead.
I forgot to add one more caveat.
Caveat. Okay.
Uh, they're born with female reproductive organs, whether they work or not. You can continue.
Okay. All right. That seemed to be the pretty much the answer. Without the you added some stuff, but that seemed to be pretty much the answer. At the end of the documentary, Matt Walsh goes home after his quest for truth and answering the vexing question in 2022
Oh,
of
it's the
what is a
truth.
woman. And he asks his wife, and his wife gives a simple answer. The simple answer he was implicitly looking for the whole time. And then she asked him to open up a jar of pickles.
I didn't really care for
Which
that
is
part, but I saw
actually
what he was
cringe.
saying.
That's actually really cringe.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
didn't
know if
care
he's
for that
just
part, but
trolling
I
the
saw what he
feminist
was
types,
saying.
but
He was
that
trolling.
definitely is gonna rub the woke the wrong way.
Oh, he
And
was
the
definitely
feminists.
trolling.
That's hilarious to me.
I like the level of pettiness.
However, I've dated several women, and almost all of them at some point have asked me to open some shit for them. So it ain't like he made it up, but I feel like if you're a straight male and you're involved with a woman long term or you get married, you're gonna get asked to open some shit.
Of course.
It's like
And
very common.
you should oblige. That's your job. What?
That's my
If I can't
job.
open it,
What kind of
I mean,
sexist, what kind of patriarchal
if I
nonsense is
can't
this?
open something, who else would you want to open it for me?
Are you not an independent woman?
No, I'm not.
So you're a dependent woman?
Yes.
Who are you
Very much
dependent
so.
on? You need a man?
Yes.
What you're saying? You need a man.
Yeah. I want a man and I need a man. Ain't
You
nothing
need,
wrong with saying that.
I don't know. The feminists would disagree. That makes it
I'm not
seem
a
like you're not
feminist.
strong enough or powerful enough to do things on your own.
I mean, of course I can do things on my own, but I also
Well,
recognize
then how do you need a man if you could do it on your own? How are you not independent if you could do it on your own?
because there's some things that I'd rather not do alone.
Yeah, but you don't need a man, right?
I need a man.
You're saying things that are really problematic. Do you know
I
this?
need guidance. I need leadership. I need wisdom.
You don't think women can be leaders? The fact that you're thinking this hard gives me pause.
Oh, I'm not thinking. That's me ignoring your question.
Oh, okay. It's an inconvenient question.
I mean, okay. I think in some spaces women can be leaders, but I mean, I prefer men
To be
that know what
leaders?
they're doing. Yeah, that know what they're
So,
doing.
like, what about a female president? You don't think we can have a female president?
It's funny because I voted for Hillary in 2016.
So on some level, you think it's possible?
No, I just thought that the alternative was not an option at the time.
What's wrong with a female president? Why can't we have a female president? And I'm being serious because I genuinely disagree with you.
I mean, I don't think that we can't have a female president. I just think that, I mean, I just personally I don't know no, I do care. I just never thought about it. Even when I voted for Hillary, I assumed that she wouldn't be making all the decisions on her own anyway. That she would.
I don't think any president makes decisions on their
well,
own.
yeah, exactly.
Teams of people.
Yeah, I agree.
But why can't women be in leadership positions? Can a woman be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company in your opinion?
If she created it, sure. If it's her business, sure.
What if she didn't create it? What if she's the daughter of the person who created it, like granddaughter?
Question. I mean, female leadership exists. So me saying that, it can't happen is kind of stupid. Like, it exists already.
I agree. Well, but I'm asking you what your hang up against it is. You seem to be opposed to it. At least you were playing at that.
Well, I think women. I think some women can handle being in leadership, and I think that there are women that I feel like you're gonna do that thing where you still man me and say, well, men do the same thing. If I say whatever I'm gonna say. So I'm just not, I give up.
What do you mean give up? That you're ruining the opportunity for people to hear the conversation and think.
I just prefer men in leadership. Like I think that women, look, everyone can be temperamental and moody and all that, but I think women are do it more. I think we're more emotional. I think we're too empathetic. I think we're too.
Wouldn't you want your leaders to be empathetic though?
Not really, no.
You don't want leaders to be empathetic?
No, not. I don't think. No, I don't. I mean, I want them to care about things, but I don't want them to lose focus on the goal. Like I don't want them to um, be swayed in such a way where they lose sight of the overall goal of what they're trying to do that would benefit society overall. And
How do
I
you feel
think,
about? Sorry.
sorry, I think women, because of that emotional side of us that and our inclination into empathy, we would lose track um and stray away from, you know, what's best for everyone.
But you voted for Hillary, so at least at one point you thought that she could handle it.
Again, not it was I was forced
You were
to vote for her.
forced by who?
Trump.
You were forced by Trump, and then you voted for him in 2020.
Yeah. Yo, growth.
Growth. Some people would say that's the opposite of growth.
Progression. I know.
All right. Well, so how do you feel about female pastors?
I don't.
You don't want. You don't like it. You don't approve.
I don't approve, no.
Why?
I mean,
What's wrong?
because
Why
it's,
can't a
it's
woman be a?
I don't have the specific verse. I think it's in Timothy, but I mean, it speaks against female pastorship, female, women leading the church. That's not our role.
Women lead the church all over America, though.
They're not Christian.
Yes, they are. There are Christian churches in there.
Okay,
They're
that's
female pastors.
they have a variation of that, but the Bible clearly is very
So it's
clear on
against the Bible for women to lead the church.
yeah, God said they shouldn't do that.
That's interesting.
They can lead other women. Like I think that women play a pivotal role in, leading other women in being good women and serving the church and, serving men. Yes, I said that. And being the support that they need to be for uh men in leadership in the church, but
You
I
are
don't
about to
think that
piss off so many feminists right
I
now.
don't think that they shouldn't be pastors. I mean, it's just weird to see a
To
female
see
pastor.
female pastor.
Yeah. Like if I went to a church that decided that they want female I would leave the church.
Why? But you voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
And I saw the error of my ways in 2016.
You saw the error of your ways. I don't think there's anything about being a
Like
woman
people
that
want
makes
Candace
you
Owens to be president.
incapable.
I don't.
I don't think there's anything about being a woman that makes that particular woman incapable of leadership roles. That I think is problematic, and it is something that is let's say theologically salient in Christianity, for sure. And it stems from a set of cultural prescriptions that are actually very complicated. And that particular interpretation of certain verses of the Bible is interesting to me. I don't know that the Bible explicitly prohibits that, but I have heard people say that's somewhere in there. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things are in the Bible that I don't think are in there. But whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not a biblical expert, but
Me neither.
I do think that the idea that women are somehow, in virtue of the fact that they're women and for no other reason, not capable or as capable of being in leadership roles as men is a deeply problematic view. And I think the feminists have a point to criticize that kind of thing. I agree with the feminists only so much because I think that some of them get they go a little overboard with their criticisms, but a lot of the criticisms are rooted in some realities that I think everybody would do well to contend with, and particularly men who perpetrate a lot of these things that the feminists complain about.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Would you prefer a male or female pilot?
I honestly think that the gender of the pilot is irrelevant. I just care if they can fly the plane. I genuinely don't care about their gender. So if I saw a female pilot, the only thing that I might feel is like that, to the extent that that profession is male dominated, that it would be good for her because she's breaking some glass ceilings, and I value that. But other than that, I just give a shit if all I care about is that they can fly the plane. Okay. What I don't want is a subpar pilot who's been given the role because representation matters, who can't fly as well. I don't want that shit. But I wouldn't assume because she's a woman that she can't fly as well.
So you
I don't want the Jean-Pierre of pilots.
Yeah, you're dead.
I don't want the Jean Pierre of pilots. I don't want
Um,
somebody who's a fucking
are
diversity
people gonna get
hire
that
who
reference? That
can't
was
fly
good.
as well.
That was good.
Yeah, I don't want that. Yeah, I think that there are awesome boss ass women who do boss ass shit in so many sectors of the economy,
No,
and sometimes even in male dominated ones. And one of them is
people
being a pilot. I
calling
think there are
me.
awesome women pilots,
People
and
are calling.
also and even in the military and the Air Force, I think that there's some awesome women pilots. Them motherfuckers are dope. I was watching a documentary the other day about some female pilots in the Navy, I believe. They're fucking awesome. They're
That's
awesome
great.
pilots.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But you
In
wouldn't
some
fly on a
circles,
plane. You wouldn't fly on a plane that was flown by a female pilot.
in some circles, you would be referred to as a simp or a male feminist.
I'm not a
But
male feminist. Fuck out of here. But I do agree with some of the
w-
things that feminists say though. That's
would
true.
I, if I had a preference for,
Also don't call me no simp. Don't do that. Not on my
I said
show.
in some circles people would. I didn't call you a simp.
Oh, okay.
You would fit the definition of that in some circles. But
That's
anyway,
calling me a simp.
and and if I had a preference on whether or not to choose, whether I could choose a male or female pilot, I'm for sure going with a male pilot.
Why?
I just like, it's weird because, and I'm going off of like me as a woman, right? In
Mhm.
stressful situations, I feel like I handle stressful situations fairly well. Um, but I feel like in a situation where I was a very seasoned pilot, I mean, I would just, and something happened with the plane, I would just trust, and my co-pilot was a man, I would defer to him.
Why? I genuinely I haven't heard an explanation. You just keep
Again,
saying
I think it's the emotional, just the
all women aren't emotional wrecks. That's a stereotype. You know that, right?
I don't know that to be a stereotype, being that every woman, literally every woman I've met is an emotional or has exhibited emotional wreckness.
That's a stereotype. So first of all, every woman isn't the same level or to the same degree emotional or exhibits emotion in the same way. I think that's
Agreed.
obviously true. There's
Agreed.
diversity in the emotional range of people in general. And
Agreed.
every man isn't like the pinnacle of just like being
Agreed.
stoic and shit.
I would still, I mean, Jason, I don't think this is like, I think most people, and when I say most, I mean like 98% of people, this is like, I'm just throwing an arbitrary number out there. I think 98% of people would agree with me in wanting a male pilot. Like,
Okay, but it's not that I'm not really chastising you or challenging that you think that. What I was challenging is the reasons behind that because you haven't really made
I
them
think
explicit.
I think men on average are more, um, can handle stressful situations but a little better than women.
Why do you think that? On what basis do you make that claim or assertion?
My eyes and ears.
But gives like so what would you present as evidence of this? Are there studies you can cite? Or are you just saying like in your lifetime, the men in your world have for by some
Okay,
metric?
so that's one thing I hate doing, like the studies. Like I get that, science is important when it comes to like having a theory, testing it out, drawing, seeing the results, drawing a conclusion. I get that. But sometimes things are just common sense, right? Like, all you have to do is just look at what's happening in front of you. And if you see it enough times, she's pulling it out of her behind. Okay, whatever, I don't care. But if you see it enough times, like, I
Oh,
mean,
the
I
chat.
feel like you
I was like,
can
what are you talking about?
I feel like you can just make that, I mean, you could just make that a statement like that. Like, I feel like men, I'm not saying all men, but like if you're, if you if you have the training, you've done it enough times. Again, I know that you can say the same thing for a woman. I just still feel, what's wrong with me feeling as a woman that, like, that I can, there's a certain level of protection associated with men, like when you're around men.
I don't know that there's anything inherently wrong with associating protection around certain. Maybe you mean certain kinds of men. Maybe you have a certain kind of men in mind.
Right.
Particularly if that's been your experience. Maybe predominantly the males in your life have been great sources of protection. Maybe your father. Maybe you have brothers, cousins, boyfriends that you dated, etc. The association isn't the issue. I think the issue is that what you seem to be falling prey to a certain kind of gendered stereotyping. And there are a lot of people in our society for whom those stereotypes don't really fit very well. So there
Right.
are women who are perfectly capable of handling pressure. They're actually amazing at it.
That's
Um,
good. And I
and
don't disagree.
right. So, but then by your standards, then at least those women, however rare you may think they are, would be perfectly capable of these leadership roles that you are
Yeah,
reserving for men only.
and if there was a situation where there were no men available to fly the plane, to pilot the plane, and they were fully capable of doing so, then they could do that. But
But why give the
that doesn't
priority to the
change.
man if you exist that there are women who are just as capable of doing it as men? Then why give the priority to the men even though those women exist? That's what I don't understand. If you have women who can control their emotions and do whatever the things that you think a person needs to do to be a good pilot, and you admit that they exist, and they are applying for the job, why does it have to be true that there are no men left before you'll give them an opportunity when they're just as capable by your own standards as doing what you think the men are better at?
Stereotypes.
But that's problematic, right? Because
Is it? I
I
mean, is
mean,
it like?
do you
Is it?
acknowledge the harms
Is
of
wait?
stereotypes?
Is it? Hold on. Okay. Is it problematic to subscribe to certain stereotypes though? Is it?
Because one of the problems with it is that the stereotypes don't apply universally to everyone. And so it creates opportunities where you're going to apply a stereotype to a person you ought not apply it to because they fit certain characteristics that are associated with the stereotype.
So you're
So for
telling me
example, if you have a
most.
stereotype of black males who are prone to violence, and you happen to encounter a black man who is not really prone to violence at all, has no violent intent whatsoever or criminal nefarious intent whatsoever, but you
Mhm.
presume that of them because that is a stereotype, that's a problem. Because now you have a false positive. You falsely identify a black person as having some kind of special connection with violence even when they don't. Because of the stereotype. That's when the stereotypes negatively impact
Yeah,
people.
but I didn't. I said certain stereotypes though. I don't obviously mean all stereotypes. Like I don't do that in my real life. Like again, I'm surrounded by men. Um, I've been surrounded by men, good men, and I don't have never, labeled them in that manner just because of uh the stereotype of men being more aggressive or more violent or whatever. So I mean, what's wrong with someone? I again, again, I know this isn't the argument, but how are you going to convince most people that would prefer a male pilot to go with a female pilot?
I don't know how many people would prefer that, and if they did, I would challenge them in a similar way I'm challenging you, which is give the rational basis. Because to me, what it seems like you have is a kind of gendered prejudice.
I do.
You Right, but it seems unjustified though, because you're presuming that in virtue of their maleness, that they are more qualified to fill a certain kind of role. And what I'm saying is that doesn't
I
make
mean,
sense.
but
There's
this
nothing about
it's
being a
the same
male.
way. It's the same way I feel like a female is more qualified to talk to me about sex or periods or things more associated with women. I view things like flying a plane or going to war, some things that are more associated with men. I don't know if that is
I
that
don't
wrong.
know that it's unreasonable to associate like being a pilot as a profession with men because I think it is an
Well,
example of
it's
a male
male
dominated.
dominated,
Yeah, I think it's a male dominated profession, but
and I think
but
it will
that
always be male
association is
dominated.
in some sense that association is in some sense contingent on the way our society organizes. It's not because men are especially gifted at being pilots, though. Right? There's nothing about being male that makes you especially gifted at being a pilot
I mean,
necessarily.
I agree, but there are more men that are more gifted at flying planes.
Ironically, another male dominated profession is being a chef. And
Yeah,
and that's ironic because
it's
cooking as a duty that is associated with
to
women
women.
historically.
Okay, so here's the thing. Maybe I'm the wrong person to talk about this with. Um,
You are the
my
perfect
sister
person
and
to
I
talk about this.
actually Okay. My sister and I actually both agree that men are better at a lot of things, even things that women are supposed to be better at.
You think men are better cooks than
Cooking is
women?
one of yes.
Why? Why do you think that? What basis do you think that?
Look, this is
Justify
not,
this.
but this is not me saying that women there aren't great. I mean, I cook pretty well myself, but I do think that that why is it wrong for me to say that there are men that
I just
cook
think
that
it's
their cooking might be better than mine?
I mean, so part of what's going to
Think
color your
about all the
judgment,
think about all the
part
shows
of
you
what's going
watch.
to hold on, part of what's going to color your judgment is your perception of whether or not the food is good is at least partially shaped by your perception of the competence of the person who made it. And if you already have an unchecked prejudice that men are better at this thing, then you're more likely going to that's more likely going to
Well,
boost
okay.
your perception of the food that you eat.
I don't.
In the same way that if you looked into the cockpit and saw a male flying the plane, that's gonna have
Yeah,
an
I would
impact
feel
on
a
your
lot safer
perception of
than
how
seeing a
good.
woman.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. That's gonna color your. That's actually psychologically. That's actually gonna color your perception of how good the food was. That bias. I just want to make that clear. But that
Actually,
aside,
actually, it's weird because I wouldn't come into eat like if I'm trying a male's food, I wouldn't automatically come into it expecting that the food is gonna. I'm not gonna have any expectations. I'll be surprisingly shocked if it's really good. But when I say men probably
no,
are
I'm.
better cooks,
Go ahead, go ahead.
when I say that men probably are better cooks or chefs, I mean, and maybe this is media bias coming into play. If you look at all the shows, the cooking shows, right?
Mhm.
Gordon Ramsay, Bobby Flay,
I'm aware.
who's in it? I can't, and that's funny because I can't name any female chefs, and I just gave you two men, and
Anthony
I probably know
Bourdain.
more
You don't.
names.
Yeah, dude. Okay, first of all, there's so many. What? Lisa Ray.
Who's Lisa Ray?
She's a chef. Clearly,
Lisa Ray is a chef
I think. Yeah.
from
L-
Players Club.
No. What?
Oh,
No. The hell. I think that's her name. Now you got me double guessing myself.
you
Hold
mean
on.
Rachel Ray?
Yeah, my bad. Rachel Ray. I
Yo,
that was my bad.
I
You
was
got
like,
me on
Lisa
that one.
Ray is not a chef.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I meant Rachel Ray when I said Lisa Ray, and my brain confused those two things. So that's on me. I'll take that L.
Hold on. Sorry.
As a
Someone said
major
I
L.
hate when women argue from their personal experiences and not on
I told
rationale.
you about
Oh,
the trolls. Don't feed them.
and this is why men are better suited. Thank you.
Don't
Prove my point.
don't do that.
Anyway, go ahead.
That person might be a man. Though.
I don't care. They're entitled to their
You
opinion.
seem to care when it comes to whether or not he's going to be in a leadership role.
No, I was agreeing with him though.
Oh, okay, or them. I don't know who that. I don't know who that. I don't know
Yeah,
what their gender
them.
is. Okay, but so what I'm trying to point out is there's nothing inherently about being male that makes you especially gifted at being a chef. And in fact, what's especially ironic about that prejudice is that cooking is a duty that's associated with women historically. So you kind of would expect women to be better at that if they're
You
supposed to
would.
be more suited for that role,
You would.
right?
But I mean, if it just so happens to be that they're not, I mean, and also taste is subjective, whatever. But I do think that when I see, I mean,
So again, here's my thing. There's nothing about maleness of it, to me. It's irrelevant. What would be relevant is whether the food tastes good or not. Like there's not like you're putting a lot of stock into a person's gender that is not really connected with their competence in these areas. Being a woman or being a man has nothing to do with your ability to have competence in being a pilot or being a chef or whatever other thing that you think are gendered in this way. Being president, being a Supreme Court justice. Do you think that there should be
what
any
about
women on the
sports?
Supreme Court?
What about sports?
I think that there are phenomenal female athletes.
That could be men.
I think that the top male athletes almost always outperform the top female athletes
Okay.
in almost every sport.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Okay.
But that's a function of biological differences between men and women, and not and so that actually that actually would make more sense if that's what you're trying to argue in terms of being better at certain things. But that wouldn't apply to things like being a pilot because that's not dependent on one's physical prowess. And so
It's
those
not.
biological no, so those biological differences aren't going to matter as much. Or being a chef is not contingent so
I mean,
much on
chef,
one's
I
physical
understand,
prowess.
but I feel like there's some agility. There's I think there are
So
physical
I'll
things
still
that are
menu. So
required.
yeah. So for example, if you wanted to be a fighter pilot, being able to withstand G forces going that actually is a physical thing, um, and so that might impact a woman's ability to be competent and very very good as a fighter pilot, and that actually might partially explain why there aren't that many female fighter pilots, and there haven't been historically. Partially explain it. That's just one factor.
Or even
Um,
regular pilots.
yeah, but they don't have to withstand. Like if you're going to be a commercial
Why
pilot,
don't women want to fly planes?
who says that
I
women
guess
don't want
that's
to
the
fly
question.
planes?
Why
Who
don't
says
more
that?
women want to fly
Who
planes?
said
Why
that
aren't
that's
there an
true?
equal number of women that are flying planes,
So
flying
there's
our
a
planes?
bunch of systemic factors
I've
that
never been
actually
flown by a female.
there's a
Have
so
you?
there are female pilots. Yeah, I have.
I I'm
There
not
are a bunch of
I know there
they're
are
rare
female
though.
pilots. I know they're rare,
Yes,
but why are
I
they
have
rare?
so there are a bunch of systemic reasons for that. And they are complicated. And not it's not a
Systemic?
simple reason. Yes. Yes. So in order to be a commercial pilot, do you know what you have to do?
No.
So one of the things, and I'm not an expert at this at all, and I can look this up if you want this to be more informed. But there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through in order to be a pilot. You have to get a
Okay.
lot of hours of training,
Okay.
of flight hours, in order to be eligible to like before they
Makes
put
sense.
you in the cockpit or in
Sense.
order to fly people. You have to get a lot of hours in. That shit's expensive, and the process to get your license is expensive as fuck too.
Okay.
Um, Now that can present certain obstacles for women, partially because um, a lot of women aren't breadwinners, or at least historically haven't been. One, two, there's all kinds of
Are you talking
biases
about
that
like
people have.
are you talking about now?
No, I'm talking about historically throughout
Can we talk
history.
about now?
Well, now is going to be linked to the history, so we're not going to talk about it in isolation.
Okay.
Okay. You got to go to flight school and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and you
No,
have to
that's
get into those schools. And
okay.
so there's all kinds of decisions being made about who's going to get in and who's not going to get in, who's cut for
Okay.
the job and who's not cut for the job, right?
Okay.
If you set the criteria in a way that discriminates against women, then that's going to shave off women that can be in the final pool. So if you're going to make some kind of physicality a requirement for being able to go into the school, for example.
What
Now
they cut what
I
they
don't know that
cut
this is
off,
an actual I don't know that this is actually how it is, and I can look it
that's
up for you.
that's fine.
But
But
my
would they cut off
my
the
point is that's an
criteria?
example.
Would they cut off the criteria to make it seem like they're trying to get not have women join?
No, that may not even
Like,
be the intent. They actually may feel like you need to have a certain kind of physicality to be
yeah,
a good
so what's
pilot.
wrong? Like,
So that would be a partial explanation for why so many women there aren't that many women in the profession. Is my
yeah, but
point.
if
I'm
that is
saying,
required to fly the plane, then I think
but what if it's
there's
not
an
though?
argument being made here that goes in my favor, and I don't know how to articulate it that well. But
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the case that the requirements or the criteria that they have are necessary or are rational, right?
why?
Because people set criteria that aren't rational all the time. You just
Yeah,
said
but
that
I think for
you
something
required a
like
pilot
flying
to
a
be male because
plane.
you feel like males can control their
No,
emotions
but I
better.
think for
That's
something
an
like flying a
arbitrary
plane where
criteria.
other people's lives are involved, you're in the 30, 50,000 feet in the air. Like you want to make sure that that criteria is on point. And if it excludes women, I mean, well, okay.
Yeah, but that presumes that women are not capable of meeting the criteria, and
I
that's the
mean, but they,
problem.
and what if they aren't? They aren't. I mean,
But what if they are, and you're just assuming
okay,
that they're not?
okay. And if they are, then they should be able to fly.
Okay, but
But if majority are not,
but if the criteria is
but
discriminating against women
I never made
effectively,
the argument that they shouldn't be allowed to fly.
I know
I
that, but
only
you're
said,
not even
I
allowing me to
don't,
finish the point I'm making.
I
What I'm
only said
saying
that
is,
I
if the
prefer men.
criteria for what it takes to be a pilot is defined in such a way where it arbitrarily discriminates against women,
But what if
right?
it doesn't? You're assuming
Okay,
that
but what I'm
that
saying, I'm not assuming anything. I'm saying if it does, that's one way that women are being excluded from a talent pool of actually being able to access or become that thing. that isn't really based on anything. That's that and to whatever extent that you have systemic factors like that are barriers to women achieving those outcomes, that's something that you should be able to criticize. That's what I was trying to say. Now I've arrived at the point.
I don't think, yeah, but again, I mean, that doesn't move the needle for me. I don't, if the criteria that you're, we don't know what the criteria is, right? But whatever it is, if that is what is needed, if that's the baseline for what is needed to successfully fly a plane, and it just so happens to exclude a lot of women, I mean, I think I'm willing to take that chance because I'd rather land safely than not.
All right. Well, let's get into it since you brought it up, and we're not even talking about what we were supposed to talk about yet, but it's fine because you are being impossible right now. All right. So,
Am I?
Smithsonian Magazine. Uh, why are there so few female pilots? Identifying the barriers that stop women from flying. This was written in 2015. If this is too old, I could find some more recent.
Let's
All
see.
right, there are 599,086 pilots in the United States as of December 2013, but only 6.61%, or 39,621, are women. By the way, that's a lot of women.
That's a lot of women.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to get into a plane where any of them flew, according to you, because you don't think that they can cut it, right?
I have a preference for men. I feel like that's different.
You have a bias for men
Yes.
that
Yeah.
is irrational. But here we go. But the numbers are somewhat misleading. Of that number, just
That means everyone's irrational.
25,216 have an other than student pilot certificate. Just 4.21% of the total of all U.S. pilots. So only 4.21% can actually have a pilot certificate that's not where they're not like a student. They're not designated a student. In late 2011, Muriel Goyer, founder of Women of Aviation Worldwide Week, contacted the FAA and obtained certificate statistics from 1960 to 2010. She determined that there was an increase in the number of female pilots during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, when the numbers rose from 4,218 to 26,896. Damn. So
what led to the increase?
That's like six times.
Yeah, what led to the increase?
I don't know. It didn't say. But since 1980, only 555 U.S. women have earned an other than student license. The percentage of pilots' licenses earned by women has stayed flat. I don't know why that's crossed out. I guess they meant to delete that. Text corrected. Okay. So it's showing what the text used to say. So I guess it's supposed to read, but since 1980, the percentage of pilot licenses earned by women has stayed flat. Why are so few women becoming pilots? For answers, we looked at some of the studies in Absent Aviators, Gender Issues in Aviation, edited by Donna Bridges, Jane Neal Smith, and Albert Mills. The study, conducted by Deanne Gibbons, a sociologist and member of the Royal Australian Air Force, indicated that young girls view piloting as difficult, dangerous, and more of a man's job. Ha! I wonder why. Additionally, views about what constitutes a typical pilot were extremely strong, writes Gibbons. A number of participants expressed a belief that they wouldn't suit flying because they lack the typical pilot traits of arrogance, overconfidence, and lifelong obsession with aviation. There's evidence, says Gibbons, that girls who become either commercial or military pilots have had an early association with flying, something Gibbons labels an epiphany moment. These are triggered by direct exposure to flying, either visiting the cockpit during a commercial flight, watching aircraft take off from an airfield, or taking a joyride during a vacation. Most of the women interviewed experienced their epiphany moment between the ages of 5 and 10. These childhood experiences were then bolstered by hands-on flying experience during the girls' teenage years. The participants also described having aviation-obsessed fathers who encouraged their interests, although the fathers were only rarely pilots themselves. Absent Aviators includes the results of a 2-year U.S. study by Penny Rafferty Hamilton, a Colorado-based pilot and aviation educator. Hamilton surveyed female flight students in an effort to identify barriers that stop women from earning a pilot license. The top reason given was lack of money for flight training, followed by instructor-student communication incompatibility. I didn't call that, though. Instructors leaving flight instruction to take airline or charter service jobs, requiring the flight student to start over with another instructor, and a lack of female mentors. Other barriers include lack of experience with and knowledge of mechanical systems and a lack of map reading experience. These obstacles can be overcome, says Hamilton, in a variety of ways. General aviation training scholarships could be expanded for women over 50 who want to start or complete flight programs. Most current funding targets a younger demographic, she says. Female flight students could be encouraged to build confidence in the more simulator time, and those with peak map reading skills and little mechanical. Okay, I think I'm satisfied with this. So the top reasons are the ones I'll stick to, because this gives me because I was kind of guessing before because I didn't know, but the top reason given for was lack of money for flight training. So women not being breadwinners or women not getting their own money or lacking money in some sense or another is one of the obstacles that I suspected would be, and that's one of the top ones cited. Followed by instructor-student communication incompatibility was another one. Instructor-student communication incompatibility. So the way that the instructor communicates with the student is, and probably because of the male-dominated nature of the profession, it's probably a bunch of men who communicate with the women in ways that maybe they don't appreciate. I'm assuming that that's part of the dynamic there. Instructors leaving flight instruction to take airline or charter service jobs. So you have a flight instructor, but then they leave to go take a job somewhere, and now you have to start over with a different instructor. And so you're like, screw this, I'm not doing this. And then requiring the flight student to start over. Oh, sorry. And then lack of female mentors. So that's actually related to what I said before, which is like most of the mentors are men, and so it kind of reinforces the idea that this is a man's thing. I don't know. These are some barriers or obstacles that are cited. What do you think?
I think that's fair. Like I didn't disagree with why the reasons as to why women probably don't have access to becoming pilots that you mentioned before reading the article. I didn't disagree with them. I mean, they're kind of the same reasons why men that want to be pilots, uh, on their own, probably don't have access to being pilots too. So, I mean, I, I don't know. I just, my, my mind. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, if I just don't know that many women want to be pilots to begin with. I feel like that's the top reason, actually.
Yeah, but
Um,
one of the reasons why, but what are the reasons why though? There's got to be reasons, right?
I don't know, fear of heights.
Fear of
Maybe
heights.
maybe other women thinking the same thing as me, that that's just something that men should do.
Yeah, but why do they think that? Let's unpack that.
What's I, I don't have any issue with them thinking that. Like,
No, but why
I
do
don't
they
think
think
there's
that?
anything to unpack.
What gives rise to the thought though? The patterns in thought.
Gender roles.
Well, that's closer, but like there's a social component, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
we
yeah,
associate certain kinds of tasks with
to
certain
men.
genders,
Yeah, and
with certain
others to women.
genders.
Yeah.
and but we there's nothing about being a man that necessitates we associate maleness with flying airplanes though, right?
Other than, the fact that probably, like me, most people have only ever seen male pilots, whether in
Yeah.
real life or in movies, TV
Hmm.
shows,
Hmm.
magazines. I mean, yeah, that's something. I agree that that's something that's been ingrained in our heads.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, it kind of goes back to my previous point. I feel like some gender stereotypes are. I'm cool with some. I'm cool with some of them. I'm cool with a lot of them.
Well, they don't contradict your conception of yourself, right?
No,
What if they did? Then wouldn't you find them more problematic or annoying?
not in this case.
What do you mean? What does that mean? I'm talking about in general.
Oh, um, again, I feel like I'm the wrong person to think about this because I stereotypes don't annoy me that much.
But wouldn't they annoy you if they if you had a pervasive stereotype about what it means to be, let's say, a Nigerian woman that did not comport with who you were, and people were acting as if the stereotype applied to you when it didn't? Wouldn't that annoy you?
I mean, like I'm one of those people that it's like if it don't apply, let it fly.
Okay, so I know for a fact, or let me not say that. I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you've dealt with pejorative African stereotypes.
Yeah, and I laugh.
So, but you never, in any sense, were annoyed by it, though. It never was the kind of thing in any situation where you're just like, that's not cool. I'm kind of sick of this. I'm sick of hearing.
Oh, you mean okay? So a really good one is like Nigerians and scamming,
That's
right?
okay.
Like,
Well, I was thinking more African booty scratcher, which is just a general one for
oh, I
African
laugh at
women.
that. What? That is
So
so
you,
funny.
so you,
I just
so
think people are ignorant.
you've never found that offensive ever. You've always been cool with that. And I don't mean people like joking with you like they're your friends.
Okay,
I
let
mean
me let
people who
me
are
let me
genuinely like, ill, you're disgusting, get away from me.
let me be. I mean, I feel like I've been honest this entire time, but let me just be very candid, like, or candid, not very. When because I have been called an African booty scratcher, and I genuinely feel at the time because the reason why it doesn't bother me at all now is because I don't remember it bothering me back then either. I literally really just thought like, oh, maybe I don't think at the time I knew what the word, I don't know, I don't remember how old I was, but I don't know if I used the word ignorant at that time at that age, but that's what I was thinking, like, oh, they're so dumb, like, to call me that, but whatever, that's what they want to do. I never, like, it wasn't.
But like, what if people were acting with respect to you as if you were disgusting or you had hygiene issues because they genuinely bought into what the stereotype implies? That Africans are dirty, they don't clean themselves, all that kind of shit. Like that, that like
I mean, but if
the
I
seriousness of the application is what I'm trying to get you to like really be honest about.
no,
You wouldn't find
I
that
understand.
problematic?
I get it. I get it. I mean, if I genuinely, I mean, if I genuinely had hygiene issues,
No, I'm
and
not saying if you had them. I'm saying if they assumed you did because you were African.
I mean, that's not.
They wrongly assumed you did because that's a negative stereotype associated with Africans. You would find that problematic at all? And then they treated you in all kinds of horrible, shitty ways because of it. Like you wouldn't find that problematic at all? I just find that hard to believe if
I
that's
mean,
what you're
no,
saying,
it
but
is.
you haven't said that.
Okay, look, it is problematic, but again, like, people handle what is thrown at them differently.
Fair. I'm not
And
really asking you about how you would handle it. I'm more trying to
no,
get
it's
you to
okay.
just
It's problematic. Yes.
okay. So that to me, that's an example of how stereotypes can go awry and they can get fairly serious fairly quickly. Um, and so the problematic nature of stereotypes is what I'm trying to get you to appreciate. It's not that they're always inherently bad. It's that
Mhm.
sometimes they suggest associations between people who fit a certain identity category and pejorative things that don't apply, or sometimes just things in general, that whether pejorative or not, that don't apply to them. And people act with respect to them as if they do apply when they don't. Right. And that creates opportunity for all kinds of problematic stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fairly innocuous. Sometimes it's like, oh, you must like fried chicken. Oh, you don't like fried chicken? You're a vegan? Oh, my bad. Like, it's not like a big deal. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm trying to insult you. It's just like, oh, like black people usually like fried chicken. That's a thing. But like, you're a vegan. My bad. But like other times, it's like, oh, you're black. So like, you might steal my fucking purse. So I'm going to clutch my purse when I'm in the elevator alone with you because I don't fucking trust you because you're black. It's like, damn, you don't even know me, lady. Like, why are you treating me like that? Like, why are you crossing the street and shit? Like, I'm not even thinking about you. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, that's more problematic. Right. And so not all of the examples are going to be the same. But what I'm saying is sometimes you do have this problematic stuff. And to awkwardly transition to the thing we're supposed to be talking about is that kind of thing is what's going on with gender stereotypes. When you have expectations of people who present as certain genders that don't comport with who they are, or who they feel they are, or how they actually behave, there's a same or analogous opportunity for misunderstanding and for prejudice against that person. that can negatively impact their life, and in some extreme cases, negatively impact their life prospects. And so when it comes to this "What is a Woman" thing, I think that for the people left of center are trying to point that out. But the "What is a Woman" documentary has this whole thing about like questioning this whole business, this whole kind of woke nonsense business, because that's the tenor of the film, with gender ideology. And my pushback is that I think that Matt Walsh had missed an opportunity to actually like deeply investigate these things in a more good faith way, and to steel man the people who he clearly was opposed to. Um, but he wanted to underscore some things that I think are problematic, and there is some validity to some of the latest and greatest medical conventions that are being adopted in terms of providing what they call as gender affirming care for young teens and young kids in particular. Like, that is a hot mess. It is
You
very
mean
experimental.
mutilation, medicalization, and manipulation?
Um, well, the mutilation is controversial of a term to use, but definitely that's it, that's what's being called into question, is to what extent are these children being abused by these medical practices, and to what extent is this abuse being uh, perversely incentivized by the monetary benefits that the people who are providing all of these kinds of permanent surgeries and whatnot um, are stand to gain. Like, you can gain a lot of money. The contention of people right of center is there's a lot of money in it, so that's incentivizing people to strongly encourage very young children to undergo very permanent transformations to their bodies if they feel gender dysphoria, whether they're diagnosed with it or not. That's interesting. Um, and certain medical practitioners are probably better or more responsible than others. I don't think that everybody's doing it the same way, to be fair, but that's kind of what the documentary is getting at. But to turning to the documentary, I want to throw something out to you. This is the first question about it that we've had, which is like, what is a part of the documentary that sticks out the most? Like, you're just like, man, we got to talk about this, because when that happened, oh boy.
Hmm.
And I can throw out some suggestions too.
I mean, there are a couple of scenes that come to mind, but the one that sticks out the most, I'm gonna reframe it. The one that got on my nerves the most, um, the scene. I don't remember anyone's name, but the part where the guy tried to say that truth was Matt trying to, get at the truth was what was the word he used? I can't remember.
Transphobic and rude when he went to
Yes,
the
yes,
University of
yes,
Tennessee.
yes.
So yeah, so Matt went to the University of Tennessee to interview Dr. Patrick Grzenka, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
So he traveled all the way to the University of Tennessee to interview him, and that person was a professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies at the University of Tennessee.
Hmm.
Um, and so why does that stick out to you? Why was that so salient to you?
Well, I mean, because look, I remember when um, people, okay, I get why or how people could think that Matt or other people asking this question, "What is a woman?" could be seen as like facetious or whatever, right? Like, okay, we all know what a woman is. Why do you keep asking the question? Um, but I mean, there's a reason why he's asking, because there are people that refuse to answer the question, and that's what was his name, Doctor what, Grzenska.
Dr. Patrick, and I want to say Grzenka.
Okay,
I
Patrick.
don't, I can spell it. I don't know how to pronounce it. I hope I'm not pronouncing it wrong.
Um, Dr. Patrick was not really trying to answer the question. Now, there was a part where um, he was saying a lot of things, and I guess the director or whoever's decision it was, while he was saying things, they kind of like, I don't know what it's called in movie world, but they kind of like glossed over a lot of the things he was saying. So there could have been some important things that he was saying in that moment, that we could have missed, but they just didn't think it was relevant enough to include in the documentary. But when Matt was like, you know, what is a woman? And the guy immediately was like, why are you asking me that?
I
And
believe if I so I've seen this so many times. So I just a quick correction.
okay, yeah, you would
I believe
remember
what he
more.
asked him was, um, how are sex and gender related, or something to that
That's
effect.
what Matt asked the
Yeah.
guy, the
So
doctor.
is there a difference between sex and gender? He was asking about the dichotomy between sex and gender, or what the relationship was. I forget the exact words he used, but that's what I believe he was asking him.
Is this before he went off on a tangent or after they got
It
back?
was he asked him that question, and then he did the thing that you just described, where they had like a time. It
A
signifies that
time
he had been
lapse or
talking
something?
for a long time,
Yeah.
and then they played this like dramatic music, and they zoom in on his face, and he's just looking at him like, "What the fuck are you saying?" Um, and then it ends abruptly, and he's done, and he's like, "So," and then he asked the question again. So, how are sex and gender different? So are sex and gender the same thing? Like that was that, and it was kind of like a punchline. Now, to me, that epitomizes the missed opportunity that I think Matt had to seriously engage with what was being said. He framed it as it's ridiculous nonsense, just verbal diarrhea, and it did accurately portray the attitude with which a lot of people right of center have or
Agreed.
approach this issue.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was a dunking on the left, but it's a missed opportunity because some people genuinely are trying to figure out, like, what is the left actually saying? And my instinct, even though you don't like us milquetoast fence sitters, is that's an opportunity right there to actually like steel man, like take what he's saying, try to distill it, try to make it the most comprehensible, particularly to a set of people who are not likely to just to agree. Put it
Hmm.
in terms they can understand, bolster it, and now let's evaluate. Now let's challenge it. But until you've done that part, till you've steel manned it, it's not going to be as effective in helping people engage with the truth or falsity of what's being claimed.
But Matt could have also genuinely thought that what he was saying was a load of crap.
I do think that Matt probably thought that, but that might be revelatory of a bias that Matt has, because what he said, if even though Matt thinks specifically, or the people that work for the Daily Wire thought that it was a load of bull, what if they're just misunderstanding what he's saying? And you never gives the audience the opportunity to even evaluate that because of the way
Yeah,
that he covers it.
I agree. I agree. But then, but in the next couple of scenes, I mean, even if and I don't if I were to guess, if I were to assume, I mean, sorry, I am on the right. If I were to assume if he was actually making sense in whatever he was saying during that, time lapse or whatever you want to call it, um, he probably wasn't making any kind of sense because of what happened after that when, he was basically saying that the truth was transphobic and not wanting to
But
answer
that's what
any of
we
the questions.
but I don't know that that is a reasonable conclusion. Like it's a reasonable. I think it's fairly reasonable to suspect that that happened, but to conclude that that happened, I don't think that that follows, because by that point in the interview, he may have become frustrated by what he perceived to be bad faith engagement, right? Because people who are on that side can
But they assume everything
fairly
bad
quickly
faith engagement.
recognize. No, not all of them. But college professors who have engaged about this subject matter with various different people over extended periods of time can in general fairly quickly assess when a person's engaging in good faith or not. Right? Not they're not always infallible with that
Okay,
judgment.
okay. Even if Matt was engaging in bad faith, why not just answer the question?
Well, because I think that what he became a little perturbed by is Matt was asking the question as if he was expecting a very simple answer. And a lot of people who genuinely believe what this particular person believes, the kind of thing he believes, do not think that those types of questions have simple answers. They think that they have very complex, nuanced answers. And that's what he tried to convey. It was like, he's like, I saw that in your questions. And I was thinking, like, man, we spent entire seminars answering this question. So it's going to be kind of like, he was prefacing his answer by saying, like, man, like, this is a big question. And then Matt proceeded to, or whoever the makers of the documentary are, proceeded to portray him as though he was just pontificating, endlessly saying nonsense. When
Which he
I think he
probably
was trying to give, but I think he was trying to give a good faith answer that genuinely encapsulated what he actually believed to be the
does. Okay,
answer,
I think so too.
right?
I
And
think
and
both.
we don't even know fully what he said, and so it's going to be hard for us to evaluate whether it's nonsense or not, particularly if he's using or evoking terminology or concepts that are germane to what he's trying to say, that are specialized jargon in his profession, right? Like
Mhm.
that kind of thing I'm susceptible to, or I'm sensitive to, because philosophy, which is my bread and butter, and I'm not a professor at all, but I was
Mhm.
like super into philosophy in college, and I was a philosophy major. And a lot of times, a lot of questions that would seem
Explains a
basic to
lot.
the layperson would actually be a lot more profound and deep, and actually more difficult to answer. And so when I hear somebody that's a college professor say that, when it comes to concepts such as gender and sex and how they relate to each other, like, I understand where he's coming from. And so the fact that he didn't give a common sense or short, terse answer, to me, is not a strike against his answer. But to a lot of people who are operating at the level that Matt's operating under, it was a strike. And it was a blow to his credibility, because they're already ready to believe that these uber liberal campuses produce
A blow
nonsensical
to whose
professors.
credibility? The
The
professor or Matt?
professor, the
Okay.
professor, the professor.
I mean, I feel like if he thought Matt was coming with bad faith, if he really wanted to, you know, get people to understand where he was coming from, he could have put it. I mean, he could have. I think you could make it simple. I mean,
But like what? So
most people
okay,
think
if I was
that.
in Matt Walsh's shoes, my approach would have been slightly different. I would have asked some of the questions that Matt asked. I think those were fair
I
questions.
mean, but you
But
still
my
want to make
approach
the
would have been,
documentary.
I would have showed what he said in full context. Then my next move would have been, let me try to prompt him to distill what he's saying or clarify what he's saying, because I have an audience of people who are not going to understand what that means. That's what I would have done. I wouldn't have done what Matt Walsh in the Daily Wire did, which is make it seem like he's droning on, pontificating, not fully showing what he's saying in its full context, and then acting like he just said some nonsense. Like, that was how it was presented. I don't think that was fair. That wasn't good faith, in my
Or he
opinion.
probably just genuinely stopped listening. Like, I mean,
Yeah, but he had the camera rolling. That's not an excuse. He could have played it in its full entirety. That's an editing choice that they made to
yeah,
make
but
him
you
look
still
like
you
that.
want him. I mean, look, he probably needed to. He had time constraints. He needed to make. He wanted to make sure that the documentary was still entertaining. I get what you're saying, but like, I
Yeah, but
mean, I don't want to
but he
listen to somebody
sacrificed the
who
good
are not
faith
able.
engagement. But he
But what if
sacrificed the
it
good
what
faith
what? But
engagement
what if
for the
he felt
entertainment
that it
value.
wasn't he? What if he felt like the guy wasn't him? He himself wasn't
The point
speaking.
I'm making, that's not relevant to the point I'm making. What I'm saying is, even consistent with him not thinking that it was a great answer, he still could have done the responsible good faith thing. And I'm
I
talking
agree.
about
I agree.
motive and intellectual
I no.
honesty,
I
and
agree.
showed what he said, the way he said it,
I agree.
and not do
They
it.
could have
Okay, so
typed it
then,
up in the transcript, put it on the screen.
right,
Why
but
would
also, but no, but after that, to really engage in good faith, what I would have done, and what I suggest he could have done something like this, is began to, in his interview questions, to clarify. You said this, and this is something that I think my audience is not going to understand. Could you unpack that a little bit? What do you mean by that? When I hear you say this term, this may be kind of a jargon term, kind of in your profession. I'm sorry, I'm a layperson. Can you explain it to me? Like, what do you mean by that? When you say this word or this term, I think this. Is that a good way to understand it? It's a bad way to understand it. Why is it a good way? Why is it a bad way? Like that mode of clarification, so that we now can get better understanding of what this professor just said that might have been stupefying to my audience. I have now engaged in a way where I'm maximizing the likelihood that they can understand where he's coming from, even if they disagree. That's a good faith engagement. But what Matt did was not good faith engagement, because he didn't even create the opportunity for him. And also, if Matt had engaged that way, he would have conveyed, among other
he did
things.
create the
Hold on,
opportunity?
hold on. If Matt would have engaged in that way that I just described, he would have conveyed, among other things, that I'm actually interested in your perspective, the way you actually think it, whether I agree or not. Right? I'm not coming in here implying with my demeanor and my tone that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, which is exactly what Matt did. and he picked up on that because he seems like he's a pretty smart dude. Seems like a pretty astute, observe, dude. Whether he's right or wrong about his views on gender, and I think that's what he was incensed by, is he thought that Matt was being condescending in his mode of engagement with him. And he's not wrong, because Matt was giving a whole bunch of body language and facial expressions that said that he wasn't feeling what he was saying. And those are subtle ways of communication that people are generally really good at picking up on. You don't have to be a college professor with a fucking degree at the University of Tennessee to pick up on nonverbal cues. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what he was incensed by. But what we saw was devised in a way, and it could, maybe it's true, I don't know, but it appeared as if he was incensed by the fact that Matt was asking him very simple questions, and he was getting frustrated that Matt wasn't accepting his weird answers.
I don't disagree. Look, I think Matt did that on purpose, honestly.
Right, but I'm criticizing what he did, is what I'm saying.
That's fine, but I think he did that for the I think he not only genuinely felt that way and whatever cues he was giving or whatever he was asking. I think he also meant to do that because I mean the film is a little sarcastic as well, so I didn't mind.
But
Yes,
it undermines itself.
I understand, but he's also, I think Matt, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but Matt, I think, also assumed that the people that would be viewing this documentary are also people that agree with him and carry his stance and would probably react the same exact way. Again, I'm not saying that he was right in doing that, but like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I chuckled at that part, which I think a lot of people did. So
yeah, I did too.
There were reasons, I think,
effect.
besides actually getting to the nitty-gritty of what the difference between gender and sex is, or whatever questions that Matt had, what is a woman, I think he also just really wanted to make sure that he brought some art and kept people engaged with the bad faith that he brought to.
But that's not an excuse.
The conversation. It's not, but I'm just.
I hear what you're saying. But imagine if I hear what you're saying.
Like I mean,
I hear what you're saying. But imagine if, so you and I have been engaging in a back and forth about things that partially I genuinely disagree, partially I'm just playing devil's advocate. I've been trying to be clear about that.
Yeah.
But imagine if I took this footage after the fact, clipped it and edited it in a way that made you look like you didn't know what you was talking about because I wanted to entertain my audience. Mm-hmm. Right? Wouldn't that be bad faith? Like you put a certain amount of trust in me coming on my show. I
just said I recognize the bad faith that Matt Walsh did. But if you wanted to do that to me, that's your prerogative to do. It's your channel. It's your content.
But wouldn't you be critical of it?
Would I be critical of it?
Insofar as I unfairly made you look bad by it.
Yeah, I would definitely have a reaction. But again, it's your content. And if I
know you're validating the fact that I have the right to do it, but what I'm saying is I think that you're acknowledging that it would be problematic to do that if what in fact I was trying to do was engage in good faith about something that we sincerely disagree about. And so that criticism is what I'm now applying to Matt, and I'm saying he dropped the ball on that. His documentary could have been more respectable had he not done things like that and throughout the entire film. Like if he would have actually engaged, like I have a perspective, I have my own views, but I'm genuinely going to challenge my own perspective. And I'm going to engage with everything that I disagree with as though it might be true.
I think he thought, sitting with the people that he disagrees with was enough. Like even just being in a room with them and asking, I mean, come on, Jason, you have to understand, like when you're asking someone a question, and you probably felt this, you probably felt it with me today. If you're asking someone a question and they're not giving you the answer that that they're supposed to give you, or as I've admitted that they're being facetious. I mean, at some point you're not gonna really want to care about what they have to say, especially if your stance isn't going to change. I get that he could, again, I agree that he could have used that specific scene to I guess give people more understanding on what the left is trying to say when it comes to this topic. But I mean, I mean, I'm not mad. Like, I'm not mad at him for doing it the way he did. Just like I wouldn't be mad at a leftist if they did the same thing. Like, I get that it's problematic, but it's not, to me. It's not
Well,
like.
why are you not mad at it if you recognize that it's problematic? Are you agree with him?
Do I agree with Matt?
Yeah, is that why you're not mad at it because you agree with him?
I agree with Matt.
But is that why
Um,
you're not mad at what he did that you recognize as problematic? You're saying you're not mad at what him
but
doing that.
I'm not mad because it was his. It was his choice. That's his choice to make. It's his platform. It's his documentary.
Should he have done it?
Whatever he wants with it.
Should he have done it, in your opinion?
If he was trying to change or get people to see the other, I mean, sure.
You think he should have done it or he shouldn't have?
Sure. Yes, he should have done it. He should have allowed us to hear what the good doctor was trying to say.
Okay, but okay. You clarify what you meant, and that I asked it, and maybe in a way that was not clear, and that's my fault. But your answer's satisfactory. So okay, so to me, part of what's at stake here is he's talking about a controversial issue that has formidable arguments on both sides, and he presented it as if only one side has the formidable arguments and the other side doesn't
Yeah,
stand
he
a
did.
chance. And that bias taints what he tried to do, in my opinion. What he had an opportunity to do was to prevent both of the best arguments on both sides, and then enable his viewers to make a choice on their own. And he could have stated even explicitly, like, I agree with this for these reasons, but at the very least, I want everybody that's a viewer to know that here are the reasons why the people who disagree with you think what they think. And now it's your
And you don't
choice.
think he did that with the other people on that side? You don't think he gave
I think the majority of the film had a similar tone of mockery.
with everybody?
With I think his engagement with almost everybody had that similar tone of dry humor and mockery. Yeah, it was very, very trolly.
Which I think was the intent. Like
I do too.
that was his artistic. That's
but
what
it
he
was
wanted to do
biased though,
artistically.
and that's the criticism. It's not
It's
artistic though it may
listen,
have
it's
been.
gonna
It's
be
biased as
biased. He's
hell.
conservative. It's gonna be
No,
biased.
but it's biased in a way that's not good faith engagement though. Like the fact that he had a view is not what I'm criticizing. He's
It
welcome
wasn't
to have
horrible
his view.
disengagement.
It was, but it was not as good as it could have been, is my point. Right?
Okay.
Right. He did the interviews. He, for the most part, interviewed people without like calling them names and stuff and ad homing them. But like most of the egregiousness happened in post when he edited things and emphasized things that they said that are liable to be perceived as kooky, especially out of context. But even in the context that, I mean, a lot of the context he probably preserved from the interview, to be fair to him. I don't think he decontextualized everything, but like some of that stuff needed to be unpacked because a lot of the terms that people are evoking, if you're not familiar with the terminology, you're liable not to understand what they're trying to get at. And that I think is a bit irresponsible with such an important issue where there is a minority segment of the population that stands to
You there?
Sorry, my thing froze. So I'll just start again to try to explain what I was playing in a minute. Sometimes my internet does things. What I was saying was, I think it was irresponsible on his part to deprive the audience of the opportunity to see the most formal arguments on both sides. What he chose instead to do, stylistic or creative though it may have been, is to subtly mock the other side for what people who already agree with Matt Walsh are likely to perceive as kooky views. And a lot of the language that they used, he used their language against them without any he didn't feel the impetus to translate what they were saying in terms that people who don't talk that way or who are not used to talking in that way could better understand where they were coming from. So he didn't maximize the ability for people on the right to understand where people on the left are coming from. He minimized that ability. And I think that that's irresponsible because there's a lot at stake for a certain minority faction of our population who identify as trans and non-binary, who the perpetuation of certain negative or pejorative stereotypes around their experience of gender dysphoria or around how they conceive of themselves is liable to color how other people behave with respect to them. And indeed, it's liable to prompt some of the persecution that they face, or if you don't prefer that term, some of the forms of discrimination and hate and oppression that they face. So that's what was at part of what was at stake. For Matt Walsh and people who agree with him already, what was really at stake was stopping the woke blue-haired, pink-haired wearing radicals from transing the kids. And like, if you frame it that way, then it's like, all right, you're gonna miss a lot of nuance from the other side, and you're gonna end up demonizing people who actually don't have nefarious intention at all.
So, and this is where I'll stop you. I don't think that people on Matt's side see any nuance. And I don't think that with this situation, this particular topic, I don't think there is any.
But there is, though. How is there not?
So there is. There is nuance. I don't think it's enough to make anyone change their mind or make anyone empathetic or sympathetic to.
Then why not present the nuance? Why choose stylistically to?
They've seen the nuance. They see it every day.
If they see it, then how can they deny that there is nuance? You just said that you don't think anybody on Matt's side sees nuance.
Meaning like there isn't enough there to change anyone's mind.
But how would they know unless you presented it to them? That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of these people are unaware of the details and the nuances that Matt didn't present.
What nuances should he have presented?
So one of the reasons why, for example, people who are operating in good faith are looking to start putting young children on puberty blockers is because puberty itself is a process that starts as early as 10 years old. And there is a tension in this discourse between medical practices that have children as young as 12, 13, 14 going on puberty blockers with their parents' consent in the vast majority of cases, and in some rare cases, despite the fact that their parents don't want it, or one of their parents don't want it. The reason why they're trying to do this is because they're trying to take into account puberty, which factually, medically, is well known to start as early as 10 in some people. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to pause, according to them, certain natural processes of development of certain secondary sex characteristics, such that the people in question are not going to have to undergo the more evasive and risky procedures of surgeries and things like that later, because what they've done is either stopped or halted or delayed those processes from puberty happening in the first place, right? And so that is one of the reasons why that is seen as preferable is because the other more dramatic procedures are actually more risky. And so a lot of people don't think that there's any rational or medical basis for doing this when there actually may be. And because that part that I just conveyed to you is left out of the discourse. They never hear that part.
No, it's not left out of the discourse.
Yes, it is. They don't hear that there are any good medically sound reasons for doing this. All they hear is that the evil blue-haired, pink-haired liberals are trying to trans.
Why do you think that's a medically sound reason? You think that because they're preventing or staving off surgery that puberty blockers is a medically
I didn't say it was a medically sound reason. I said it may be one.
Okay, maybe one.
They don't even hear that as the option because they're all they hear.
People have heard it and still don't
all
want
they
it.
hear. There are people on the right who haven't. But there are people on the right who haven't, though, right?
They don't need to.
Okay, but
because it's not an option. Why would it?
How are you? Then how are you? Wait. Then how are you defending the fact that they heard it if you're admitting that they didn't hear it?
There are people that have heard it, and there are people that probably haven't. I don't know the people that haven't.
And the people that haven't heard it, right? They're deprived of the ability to take it into account. And you pretending like it doesn't matter.
Or they don't want to take it into account.
Okay, but they have to, though, if they're going to be honest about the issue. What?
Why do they
Okay,
need to take it into
so
account if they
because it's
if they're
relevant to
coming
the
from a
issue.
Christian perspective? Because most of them are on the right. They're
What
coming from a Christian
just
perspective.
because they're
Why would
Christian
it
doesn't mean
even
they
need
have
to
to
be
they can
taught?
ignore basic facts of the issue though. What? Like that's
It's
not
a
an excuse.
basic fact that
That
puberty blockers
puberty
may
starts
stave off
that
surgery.
puberty okay. That's part of it. It's also a biological fact that puberty starts as early as 10 in people, right?
I don't
And
disagree with
puberty
that.
is key to the development of a lot of secondary sex characteristics that are
I
at
don't
issue
disagree with
in
that
terms
either.
of people's
That's
body
science
dysmorphia and
for
body. Okay,
you. That's
so
biology.
all of that context forms the rational medical grounds for why some people think it's a good idea to start children who are trans on puberty blockers. That's part of the rationale, but you can't evaluate the merits or the lack thereof of that rationale if you don't know about it. These people, there are a lot of people who have never heard that rationale who think that the evil blue-haired, pink-haired, uber radical liberals who don't have a god are trying to trans the kids, that they're guilty of child abuse. That's what they think because they haven't heard the nuance, and that's a problem. Because part of what I think Matt is doing that's
What if that
irresponsible is he's.
what if that
If I can
nuance isn't
finish
enough?
one thought real quick, part of why I think Matt is irresponsible is that what he's doing is perpetuating that ignorance by not covering it in his documentary. And the people who are most likely to watch his documentary are the people who are most likely to have that ignorance.
Why is that? Why do you think that nuance is enough for people to need to hear?
Because they need to take it into account if they're going to sincerely and honestly evaluate all of the relevant facts involved. Part of the dilemma here that is at issue about whether or not we should do this as a standard medical practice is the conditions of puberty and the outcomes of that development, if left unchanged, are going to necessitate even
Why would
more radical
anyone want
medical.
to support why would anyone want to support literally blocking your natural bodily processes? Like, and some people might think, oh well, that you do that now, women do that now with birth control. I'm against that too. So why would you want
You're
to
against birth control?
yes, I don't yes, I
Okay.
am.
Are
Why would
women
you want
are women
why would you
required to get pregnant if they want to have sex and not have kids?
what?
Are women not allowed to have sex?
They can have sex.
Okay, but what if they want to have sex and not have kids?
You said, can they have sex and not want to have
What if
kids?
they want to have sex and not have kids?
Aren't there other forms of contraception?
Okay.
I'm not.
Why are the other forms of contraception okay,
Okay.
but birth control not okay?
Wait. I never said that women can't take birth control. I said I don't agree that they should, and I don't take it myself. So I'm not saying that women shouldn't.
But if you say you don't agree that they should, you're technically implying that they shouldn't because you disagree with the fact that they're doing it. You disapprove of that.
Yeah, I disagree that they're doing it, but I can't control. I don't police their bodies.
I know you're not policing them, but you're expressing disapproval of it if they choose to, right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, you disagree with it in practice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say that you disagree with the practice.
Puberty blockers, like why? I just don't see any positive, none whatsoever, of having a child take them because you're trying to help stave off the possibility of having or avoiding surgery.
Well, because the surgeries are more risky in terms of the threat to a person's
And
life
puberty
than
blockers
the
aren't.
puberty blockers are.
So puberty
No, it's not that
blockers
they're not risky at all. It's that they're less risky than the. Do you know how risky surgery is?
Do you know how risky puberty blockers are?
I know how risky they can be. Yeah, particularly if you take them over extended periods of time. I'm not denying
Because
that
to
they're
me,
risky.
I put them.
I'm saying that they're less risky than having whole ass bottom surgery and top surgery, though.
To me, they're the same. They're
But
very,
they're not.
very similar.
The risks are not the same medically.
To me, they're very similar. They're very similar.
So they're similar in that they both entail risks to a person, right? They're similar. I'm not denying the similarity, but the risks are not the same, though. There are a lot more ways to go wrong having open surgeries than there are to take puberty blockers. There are ways that can go wrong. I'm not denying that. You're right about that. To steel man you, if you take puberty blockers for extended periods of time, right? You can get cancer Like you're guaranteed to get cancer. Also, if you certain kinds of puberty blockers are actually highly correlated with osteoporosis.
Are you trying to bolster my argument?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm steel manning you. So that's what steel man
Yeah,
means.
I forgot you said that.
Yeah. So those are so you're not wrong to point out risks, right? There are risks. But what I'm saying is by comparison to the risks associated with doing any kind of open surgery, there's so many ways that can go wrong that's more risky.
But you do understand that I get what you're saying, that puberty blockers are less risky than surgery. I understand that. But do you understand that there are probably a lot, I can assume, I feel like it's safe to assume this, that a lot of people think that puberty blockers are just as bad as surgery.
But
Top and bottom
on what
surgery.
rational or medical basis are they making that claim? Like there's a question of accuracy of that contention. I don't think that's an accurate contention if you understand the relevant. And I'm not an expert, by the way. I want to lead with that. I'm not trying to present myself as some kind of medical expert. I'm regurgitating things that I've read that medical experts or people who have presented themselves as medical experts have said. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm fallible in everything that I'm saying right now.
I haven't really read any of the
But
studies.
my layperson's
I'm leaning on my common sense and
okay, fair
God's.
enough. But my layperson's understand my layperson non-medical expert understanding of this is that there are certain kinds of risks that are associated with surgeries that are way riskier or way more likely to result in some kind of catastrophic negative consequence than going on puberty blockers for short spans of time. If you go on puberty blockers for several years, though,
But are they going?
That's when they maximize the risk.
But hold on. Because maybe I don't understand this particular part fully. When a child is placed or given puberty blockers, are they not then? And maybe it changes from puberty blockers to like opposite sex hormones or something, but are they not relegated to taking the whatever they're taking for the rest of their life? Like if they want to
No, they take it as long as they want to delay the effects of puberty. So they and also if you take it for extended periods of time, it's well documented that it's almost guaranteed to give you cancer. There's limitations just with that.
Sorry, this conversation is, I mean, the fact that we even have to argue, I mean, and I get it, it's just for the sake of the conversation, but it's just so telling of like where we are in society. Like when it comes to this sort of thing, the fact that people have to argue, and I'm not talking about us, just in general, the discourse is like whether or not kids should be taking puberty blockers, because you and I want to, maybe I shouldn't assume, but I just feel like this should not even be a discussion. Like we should not be putting children on puberty blockers. Why would you want?
What if they're trans?
Children? We shouldn't. Oh, I told you previously that I don't believe in trans. I don't think it's something.
What if they experience gender dysphoria at a young age?
The solution is not puberty blockers. The solution.
So what is the solution?
Is some level of therapy that I'm not aware of. The solution is God.
The solution is not God? What if they're not religious?
If well, you can get religious. There's always time.
The solution is God.
Yeah.
I think you were better off with the psychological thing.
That's fine. I mean, and this is why I don't bring.
What kind of therapy do you think that? What kind of therapy would you recommend?
Things like that, but I mean,
what kind of therapy?
I genuinely believe that. But
what kind of therapy would you recommend for a person experiencing?
I don't know. I'm not in the mental health field, so like.
You don't think that people in the mental health field have thought of that?
Thought of what kind of therapy to offer a child that? Okay, back to our previous conversation. What therapy would you offer someone that has pedophilic thoughts?
I don't know. I can look that up for you.
Because I would assume it's within the same vein of what you would offer a child that is going through their trans thoughts.
Yeah, but we went over this before. So being trans is not sexual orientation. It's not sexual proclivities. It's a matter of identity. So they're not the therapies would be fundamentally different because the the
I
relevant
no, I
feelings
get
or
it.
inclinations
What I'm
involving at the
saying,
same.
what I'm offering is that they would just need a level of therapy that I'm not aware of. That's all. I'm not trying to compare and contrast the two. I'm just saying that they would need some level of high level of therapy to help cope with that. I don't know what how to deal with that. I really would hope that I would never have to deal with something like that. I sympathize with parents that have to deal with stuff like that because I know, like, there's just some things you just know. I mean, some parents are just lost and foolish, but I think most parents wouldn't want to have to make that kind of decision to put their child on blockers.
I don't think any parent wants to make that decision. That doesn't mean that it's a bad decision. Just saying. All right. So here, psychotherapy for minor attracted persons. So I'm trying to get. This is a cursory Google search. I can do a better search if we feel we need to. If this is not satisfactory, minor attracted persons or MAPS frequently hesitate to seek psychotherapy for fear of rejection, stigma, harmful treatment techniques, or inappropriate reporting. So psychotherapy of some kind, it would be recommended, I assume. Therapists may be uncomfortable or lack information about this population. This brochure has been developed collaboratively by therapists, MAPS, and allies through the organization Before You Act to provide you with principles of ethical and effective treatment as well as further resources. There are very few studies on non-offending MAPS or therapy for them. Therefore, this document cannot be considered definitive. However, it is based on our experiences providing and receiving psychotherapy, as well as research on populations facing similar mental health issues and emerging research on the needs of MAPS. Before You Act also promotes research into this population. So we have a situation in which there's very little research on this. To me, that signals that there's probably going to be a whole bunch of open questions that we're not going to be able to answer here because the research has not been done. Part of the reason why I think the research has not been done is because this is a very taboo subject in the field of psychology, because
Mhm.
there is so much stigma surrounding what you call pedophiles and what they're calling MAPS. Part of what they're trying to do in making that delineation is destigmatize it so that it can create opportunity for them to do the medical and psychological research that they can base their psychotherapy on, because what they ultimately want to do is do something that actually is effective. So I don't know that we're going to find the answers here, but that gave me at least some understanding of what we're dealing with.
They
So who are
couldn't. They can't
MAPS?
do their psychotherapy on people that they know have already acted on their pedophilia.
You would
See
have to
how
have a population of people who volunteer, right? Like you don't just do
so
psychotherapy on random motherfuckers against their will. That's not okay. It's a terrible
I
practice.
mean, I would assume if maybe am I wrong for assuming this? If you know, engaged in pedophilia and got caught, sir, and had to go to prison, I don't know why you wouldn't go to prison for life for that, but if eventually got out, you don't think that there's some organization that would try to get them to undergo some type of, or they weren't receiving some type of therapy while they were in prison or get it afterwards? You think they would decline that?
I don't think you can decline if it's a part of your sentence. I don't think you can decline that.
Okay, so even
Uh,
let's say you've served the entire sentence and you're free, and they
uh-huh.
still want you to I mean, they want you to continue the therapy. Even if you could decline, you would decline. Why would you risk them thinking that you would go back to engaging in those behaviors by declining the therapy? I feel like they have what I'm essentially saying is
I
I feel like
wasn't
they
saying that.
have their population of people that they could do this, what you just read, they could do that on those people that they already know have exhibited those behaviors.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's not gonna help me. Um, Sorry, I was halfway listening because I was reading. Repeat your last question again.
No, I
One
was
more time.
saying all they if they needed they said you said that they need to, I guess, develop more, get they need to get more information on how they can help pedophiles,
Yeah,
right?
more data on the effectiveness of certain
But
strategies
why not
of
tap
psychotherapy that they're going to provide for them.
why
Right?
not tap the people that they already know have engaged in the behavior?
What do you mean
Why,
tap? Like
as a
if
pedophile, why wouldn't you want help?
what do you
What the
what do you
what
mean
the fuck?
tap? So first of all,
Like like as in, I'm pretty sure there are databases.
there's a
Pretty,
taboo stigma issue is one of the
I'm pretty
reasons.
sure there are databases of people that have been convicted of pedophilia, correct?
Okay, but
Or
how would
child
that serve?
pornography even.
But how would that serve questions around what psychotherapy treatments are effective? Because going to prison is not one of the options for psychotherapy, right?
I'm saying if aren't there pedophiles that go to prison and then they're released?
I think so.
Okay, so couldn't they just
If they
use
don't get
those?
murdered in prison.
Yeah, if couldn't they just use those that sample of people for their
But do you
psychotherapy?
think that they go to prison and then they're cured?
No, that's why they would go
Well,
to
then,
therapy.
yeah, but I don't know what percentage of convicted child molesters or pedophiles, if you want to use that terminology, have undergone any kind of psychotherapy or counseling as a part of their sentence, or maybe just it was offered to them and they took it, but they didn't have to. I don't know what percentage of that. Presumably, that would be a population among which they can get some data,
Hmm.
possibly, but it doesn't sound like there's a wealth of that because if there were, then they will probably have more data. And so, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create at an institutional level opportunity for them to get that data by destigmatizing the subject matter and then making it possible or enabling or maximizing the possibility that people who are minor attracted persons will come forward so that they will volunteer for these kinds of things. But if they're going to be stigmatized as pedophiles like you insist they should, they're not likely to come forward and admit that, right?
Correct, but I mean, again, if what they're begging for is data, why can't they just use the ones that already know are pedophiles?
Because what they want data on is what strategies of psychotherapy are going to be the most effective in minimizing their likelihood to act on the urges and or if possible get rid of the urges altogether.
Or why can't they do that on people that have already acted on the urges?
Do what?
The psychotherapy.
But if you're going to do experiments about in psychological research, right, you're going to have
You
people
want people that have it.
volunteering.
I understand, but
Yeah,
like,
so if they're
I
not
mean,
going to
I get that.
volunteer, then how can they conduct
But
the
if
experiment,
you're
I guess?
looking for if you're looking for effectiveness,
You're
wouldn't
talking about these people as if they're not human beings, by the way.
am I?
Yeah, like they're lab rats.
In what
Talking about
way?
them like they're lab rats.
If you're looking for effectiveness, wouldn't you want your research to consist of people, not lab rats, people that have engaged in the behavior, which you probably have easier access
I
to because
I
it's
don't know
already
that you would necessarily need to have people who've actually acted on it
that.
to
But
make your
okay,
research.
I what I'm saying is because you're not going to get people that are going to run to psychotherapy, these organizations offering psychotherapy
Mhm,
for something that no one knows that they think in their brain. Why
mhm.
not use the people that already have exhibited and acted on these thoughts
Use
to
them.
see what the effectiveness is? Yes. What?
Use them. They have to volunteer. You know
Yeah.
that, right? You
Okay,
can't
let
make
them
them.
again, I asked this before. Why would a pedophile deny help? We already
Why?
know you're a pedophile.
Because
Why would
well,
you deny
not first
help?
of all, a lot of pedophiles like so a lot of people who've been convicted and are registered and they move to different places away from the people who know, and the people are none the wiser unless they look it up. People don't just
Yeah, but
randomly look
so
that shit up
is there
around
not a
prison.
national database
Yeah,
or
but people
something?
don't. First of all, most people don't even know how to access that database.
Yeah, I don't know how to access the database.
Exactly. So
But
most people ain't
I
looking
feel
that
like
up about random
I feel
motherfuckers that
like
they just met. If why
but I
would you?
feel
What would prompt you to look that up about a person?
I f
Like if
it
your
here,
neighbor was a
Imma
if your
tell you.
neighbor was a pedophile and you
Here
didn't know, why would you
here
look him up? What?
here's what I'm gonna say, right? If you are so inclined and so like you have this need to want to do this research and help these people, I feel like I don't know who controls the database for pedophiles. I mean, again, this conversation is so disturbing, but I don't know who controls this database, but I'm assuming that the person that controls the database would have no issue if you are an established organization that in its mission statement wants to help people like that. They would have no issue after going through the proper vetting and everything. I'm pretty sure they would have no issue in offering that database for you to look at so you can go and um, contact these people to see if they would like to volunteer to receive this psychotherapy, right?
Yeah, I don't know that they already don't do that. If that's what you're saying, like
Yeah,
it.
I feel like I feel like that if they're not doing it, they definitely should start.
Yeah,
I assume that they are.
I don't think that's an unreasonable suggestion. I guess what I was trying to say is they can't force anybody, so they would have to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ask.
Again, I this is my third time asking the question. Why would you like knowing that the level of stigmatization that this carries, if someone brought the opportunity to you to help you, you know, lessen those inclinations or those tendencies, why would you deny the help
There's all kinds of reasons why people wouldn't sign up for that kind of thing. Shame might be
for
one of the
that?
biggest ones. Yes, shame might be
I
one
get
of the
the I
biggest
get the
ones.
shame, but if the goal is to like,
And I
help
mean,
you help
so there
you
are people who get DUIs who don't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, even though it's offered to them. There are people who get busted for
I
all kinds of drug offenses
I understand.
who are strung out on gut drugs
You know what?
who don't seek help.
I completely understand you, right? But I just feel like this
Is no different from those things in
it
terms
you're
of
right,
people's
but
willingness
mm,
to seek help.
you're right, but I feel like there is a difference, and they should absolutely accept the help if it's offered to them.
I think that people
Because
I think that there's no difference in
the
there's no
stigma
difference in saying that people should seek help if they need
there
it.
is a difference because the stigmatization of being an alcoholic is nowhere near the stigmatization of being a pedophile.
Okay.
Nowhere near. It doesn't touch it.
Okay. It's more mild,
If I
but
saw an
yet
alcoholic, I'd be like, okay,
yeah,
you're an
it's more
alcoholic,
mild. It is more mild. It's less taboo to be an alcoholic than it is to be a
which it
pedophile.
shouldn't be, but
But it is. But yet you still have people who get caught with in drunk DUI, that kind of stuff, who still don't seek help though. So
yeah,
there's
because
shame associated with that and all the
there isn't a
reasons,
lot of
all of
shame
the but
associated with
all of the
alcoholics.
reasons why they don't, right? Even though it's mildly stigmatized, are going to be maximized when you have something that's more stigmatized. It's not going to be less. It's going to be worse. You're going to have less people
But
signing up for that.
Jason, I'm not talking about the people that have these thoughts and haven't acted on them. I'm talking about people that have had the thoughts, acted on them, served the time
I
out
am
of
too.
prison.
I am too. I'm talking about them too. What I'm
Why
saying is
wouldn't they
the
want
more
help?
stigmatized, the less likely they're going to accept help. It's worse for this because it's more taboo, is what I'm saying.
So they would run, so they would, you think they would rather run the risk of acting on those thoughts again?
I don't think they view it that way. I think they view it as I just want to go hide somewhere and not be demonized for this anymore. And they take their chances. I don't think they're thinking very long term. And some of them may think I don't need the help because it's very hard to accept help even when you need it. There's a bunch of different psychological reasons why people don't seek help even when they need it. Like
That's true.
you know what I mean. So like
That's very true.
like we got to be realistic
And
about human beings.
not, I recognize that. I'm just saying that if it were me, no matter how much shame I was feeling about that particular thing, if I'm trying to rid myself of that shame, I recognize that the process starts with accepting the help.
I know. I feel you. In principle, I agree with you. I'm just. I don't know how realistic it is to expect
Yeah,
a
I agree
population of
that it's not that
convicted
realistic.
child molesters to sign up for this kind of help, given the way people are treated in our society. Maybe there are pathways. Maybe there are some people like that. I mean, there are
And
some stories
they
of some
could do
people
it in such
who
a way
were
where it's
convicted
still
or whatever
prevalent.
who sought help. They do exist. There are some. I just don't know like what percentage of this population that we're talking about are doing that. And
They
I
could
think that
do it
there's
in
probably
such
going
a
to be
way
some
where
kind
it's
of
casual.
volunteerism. They might be able to require this of people who are convicted, but then I don't know how that'll taint their studies, because if you don't volunteer, right? Like, is it if the psychotherapy doesn't work, is it because you weren't really invested in it, or is it because the
Yeah,
psychotherapy is problematic? And so
yeah,
you don't want that to be a variable, right?
yeah. Well,
So this is actually tough.
that's why it's important that it is voluntary and they accept it rather
Yeah,
than it being forced upon them.
but yeah, to get back to the documentary proper, and I want to ask you something that you've been avoiding. um
Me
so
avoiding?
there's a part towards the end where Matt speaks to somebody whose name is Dr. Grossman. Dr. Grossman is a woman, and Dr. Grossman is one of the first people that he interviews in the documentary who seems to take the side that he's aligned with. And Dr. Grossman, about 51 minutes into the film, uh asks about the origins of the gender ideology that kind of is presented as responsible for all of the kooky woke answers that he gets to the question of what is a woman. And then Dr. Grossman explains in no uncertain terms that there's some kind of seemingly reprehensible scientific origins of what's known as gender affirming care. And she moves on to detail the history of Alfred Kinsey and John Money. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts, reactions to that part of the film?
Um that what'd you say his name was? Alfred uh
Alfred Kinsey and John
Kinsey
Money.
and John Money are disgusting individuals, and I cannot believe that this is what I mean. I don't understand how people I don't understand how people have taken what they've done and made it what it is today, knowing what they've done. I mm.
What have they done?
So which one was it that had oh my god. Which one was it that recorded the orgasms of children? That was Kinsey?
I want to say John Money, but don't quote me on that.
I think
John Money was
Money
the sexologist, also known for his
I
research
think
on sexual identity and
Kinsey
biology.
well, whichever one. I mean, recording the orgasms of my children. Oh my god. Uh, having them have sex with what did they say? Have sex with I can't remember, but I mean just that in itself. What was another one? The I think Money was the one that um facilitated, a situation several times where the twin brothers, did sexual acts on each other. I'm I can't even talk about this stuff. Like I
I
don't know.
actually forget which one was responsible for that, and I'm trying to find it right now in real
That was
time.
Money.
It was John Money. Okay.
That was John Money. And obviously, I mean, I think you can very well assume that that's what led to both of those, you know, both of the twins dying, right? One
Mm-hmm.
overdosed and one committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know how you can hear stuff like that from the creators of this ideology and follow this ideology and think that it is beneficial or in any way affirming to children. I really cannot wrap my mind around that. I really cannot. And I don't care. You bring up nuances a lot. And what I'm saying is I don't care how much. I think a lot of people don't care about the nuances because if something started evil, there's nothing that comes from it that will be good. Nothing. And it really, and a lot of people, and it's scary because I knew a little bit of these situations before the documentary. Um I guess not enough since I can't remember who did what. But um it's interesting that a lot of this, especially what they're trying to put in, SEL, social emotional learning, a lot of this stems from these two men, what they're teaching in colleges, and when it comes to gender studies and women's studies and whatever other studies, this is all stemming from these men. And who's to say that it stops at these two men? There are probably other people that also had nefarious agendas, um that are associated with this ideology. I just don't see how you can hear something like that and defend it and perpetuate it and put it in curriculum and try to frame it in such a way that it's supposed to be positive. Like, I just don't like what is there's it is absolutely, it is very easy to leave kids alone. It's so easy to like let kids be the innocent little creatures that they are. It's so easy to do that. And the fact that people are not seeing how any of this, it violates children to the highest power. I don't understand it. I really don't. So hearing that, I mean, it was triggering. I don't know how it wouldn't trigger anybody. Um
Do
and
you think
knowing,
that that these men were presented in the fairest way possible?
maybe they weren't, but and
And this is part of what I think is problematic, is it undermines the credibility when we pointed out the other stuff that he did. It undermines the
God,
credibility of
Jason,
this
I hate
part.
you. I hate you so
So
much.
we got to be very careful about accepting all of the indictments of these individuals as presented. It doesn't
That's
mean that there's
fair.
no validity
That's
to
fair.
criticizing them, but like, because the bias is so pronounced, it's like, well, are these men as bad as they're being presented, or is it being exaggerated in some sense? And I actually genuinely have a question about that. Now, I've been reading from a lot of other sources about these dudes, and they
Uh-huh.
seem like they lost the fucking plot, but I'm not in a position to evaluate it properly, mostly because I'm a layperson. I don't have the relevant psychological expertise. I don't have the relevant background in sexology or just like matters of sexuality in human beings. And I got to be honest, I have a whole bunch of preconceived notions about what is and isn't acceptable sexual behavior that these two individuals have
On what
violated.
planet is seeing how kids orgasm? Like, how is that? Like,
You're
I
preaching
see.
to the choir. My
So,
only point is I
no,
clearly have a
and,
bias against these individuals
I understand
that
that.
needs to be checked, and until it's properly checked or accounted for, I can't take my natural inclinations towards certain views as seriously as I want to.
So
So
I,
I understand the problematic nature of what you're talking about. I affirm it. I'm not going to be willfully dense about that. I think it is problematic. It's definitely controversial at the least, but like, it's hard for me to draw hard, like, staunch conclusions like it seems like you want to, because of the things I'm pointing out right now. Which is like, there's a lot I don't know, and I want to make sure that I'm able to take it into account before I make that conclusion.
okay, well,
However,
okay,
at
okay.
this point, all I can say is I lean towards what you're saying,
That's
because the
and that's
things I'm
fine.
reading about these dudes are disturbing, genuinely disturbing.
And that's fine. And the thing is, I'm glad actually that you've actually gone further on to read other things about them because I haven't. Me hearing that about them, I mean, you know how there's some things that like it to me it's like porn. Like it's one of those things. It's like
Porn, what is that? I don't know what that is.
it's one of those things where it's like
Never heard of it.
technically not okay for people to be. At least it's not like people don't brag about like watching porn. I mean, some people do, but in my circles they don't, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
So
they just
it's
watch it and
to
keep
me
it to
it's
themselves.
akin to, huh? What'd you say?
Nothing.
No, for me it's akin to that. Like I don't want to read more. Once I heard that, I'm not inclined to want to know more about you as a person if that is what if that's even and unfortunately it is the way I was introduced to them, right? These horrible things is what I associate them with now. And even if they did anything good, I think that what the bad things that they've done completely negates all the good. For and people like to do the same thing with what's his name, Martin Luther King Jr., right? Like, oh well, actually, they protect him. Everybody know. Well, I don't know if everyone knows him to be, a lying, cheating. Some people said he was on the down low, whatever. But they're like, oh well, but his private life shouldn't overshadow what he did for the world, right? But I think in some situations, namely King Alfred Kinsey and John Money, that I think this alone should completely they're not. I'm not saying that there's I am of the I don't agree with conservatives where um their content should be banned, right? Because I do think it's 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 important for us to know this kind of information,
Mhm,
right? So that we know what we don't want our children to be reading or consuming, right?
mhm,
um so it is important for us to know what these people wrote and what they studied, no matter how horrible it is. Obviously it should be consumed by people that are of the appropriate age. But like I don't think that their stuff should be banned, but I also don't think that there's like you should base everything like all this gender stuff. Like I mean, man, I don't know how you defend that. I wonder
I don't
how.
know, man.
And
I
I've
don't
never
know.
heard of, and it's funny because I've never heard a leftist, and I don't listen to a lot of them, but I've never heard a leftist or someone that um spreads the gospel of gender ideology. I've never heard them once, talk about Kinsey or money. Never. Why would they?
I wonder why.
I wonder why. Because your whole shit will fall apart. Everything. No one would want to listen to you after hearing that. I think that should be this. And even though Matt Walsh, I definitely think he had good intentions with this documentary. Yes, I think he dropped the ball when it came to certain things and in us learning more information about how the left thinks and what how they view things when it comes to it. But I definitely 100% think that just because of that one little part where the good clean doctor goes into into talking about Keynesian money, everybody should be, again, of the appropriate age, should be aware of what these men have done and how this whole ideology, this religion is based on them. They are the father.
Is it possible for deeply disturbed, troubled scientists to do good science?
What is good? Like, what are you trying to say that was good? Well, I know you're not, but
I'm asking you
is
to
you
consider
said is it
whether it's
possible for
possible for
deeply troubled
people who are
scientists to
deeply
do good
troubled, let's say they're
science?
sexual deviants and all of the things that you just described them as, is it possible for them nonetheless to do groundbreaking science that is legitimate science?
Yes, but you want to know the cool thing about science and scientists?
Mhm.
There are so many other people doing what good science, right? Like
right,
there are other scientists. If like let's say Keynesian money did do good science,
right.
I'm pretty sure there's other people that you can reference that did that same good science.
That followed in their
That you
footsteps
don't
and
need to you
replicated their
don't need to
research.
bother. Yeah,
What
you
if,
don't need to bother with Keynesian or money.
fair enough. So Kinsey and Money are the fathers of a certain kind of medical psychological paradigm as it relates to sexuality, and gender identity. And so let's take for granted, just for sake of argument, that they're deeply disturbed individuals whose personal lives were fucked up, and
Mhm.
and we should indict them for all of the usual reasons that we do that. There's still an open question about whether or not the scientific bases of their scientific claims is well founded as it relates to the way that gender works and the way that human sexuality works. And it might be true that they actually had some very valid scientific points that they made, or data that has been expounded upon. And I think that this is actually precisely the contention of a lot of people left of center who are citing their work. Is like their science is still legit, even though they are fucked up. And one of the reasons why the people don't mention them is because what they care about is their scientific
The
findings and
science.
data, not their personal lives. And if that's true, then that's one way to steel man the other side. It's like, well, now you got to evaluate the merits of what they actually are, what the science
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
right?
Well,
And
now I
so,
feel like I take my response back. When you asked me if a bad scientist can do good science, now I don't know if I have a definitive yes anymore.
yeah, I would say that it's possible. It doesn't mean that their science is good science, by the way. Good
Because
scientists,
they're
good
the
scientists can do
deviant.
bad science too.
Yeah, the deviance, is that a word? Yeah, their deviance could have inspired. I mean, what is good science? Like, I feel like good science is subjective, right? So,
No, we have certain standards.
I
So,
mean, yeah,
like
okay,
for example, you have
yeah,
to have
sure,
you have to
okay,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hypotheses. You have to have,
You're right. Okay, but when it pertains to gender identity and ideology, is that good science?
well, if you're doing science
That
with
are-
respect to if you're doing science with respect to those concepts and you define them scientifically, presumably you could do good science with respect to those things.
Because I mean, in my opinion, that science has led to, all the mutilation, medicalization, and manipulation.
But is it sound though? In other words, if it were in some sense corrupt in the way that you think it is, then you should be able to have scientific grounds to disagree with it. If it's sound though, and you try to disagree with it on scientific grounds, then presumably you would lose. And so that, to me, that's another independent argument for when you need to evaluate the scientific merits of the claims and the research that's been that these two people are kind of the fathers or the founders of, right? And if you can criticize this gender ideology on those grounds, I think that that would be a more legitimate basis. If you're just going to attack the originators of the domain of science in question and attack their personal lives, that doesn't really say much about the merits of their claims, any more so than
Well,
attacking Martin Luther
no,
King
hold on,
Jr.
hold
for
on,
being
hold
a
on,
either
hold
gay
on,
or for apparently allegedly plagiarizing or allegedly cheating on his wife have
hold
any
on.
bearing on the merits of the claims that he was making for civil rights.
But I feel like you're forgetting one very important thing. John Money and Alfred Kinsey weren't personal decisions they were making. They did this in the name of science. These were professional. These
Like, you mean
experiments
like the
weren't
experiment? Yeah, the
personal.
controversial. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I
they
thought you.
were
I
professional
yeah.
decisions that they made as scientists, not as men, right? They made the decisions as scientists. So to me, the whole shit is tainted.
Well, like you can criticize, I think, fairly the medical ethics of the
Why
experiments,
would you need? I
but
really don't even
uh,
want to ask that question again. Why would you need to see how children orgasm? What
I
what
don't. I don't. I would have to see it in the context of the study, but I don't know. I have no. I have
that
no
that
idea.
makes no.
I don't know.
Oh my god!
If the scientific question before it was
Why
whether or
does
not
the
it was
world need
possible
to know
for,
that?
well, I don't know, if there was some kind of scientific relevance to the question of whether or not children at whatever age these children were had the ability to do so, Maybe.
Still, why do we
Maybe
need to
there's some
know that?
scientific merit. Well, I don't know. Maybe if there's
You
some
would
kind
only
of
need to
damage
know
to the
that if you have
if
the
there's kind of
intention of
if there's some
having
kind
sex
of
with children.
if there's no, that doesn't, that's not the only reason why we might be interested into this question
It's the
medically.
main. What?
No, that may not have anything to do with why we might be
Okay.
interested in
What?
that question medically. So, for
What?
example, if you wanted to have some kind of information about um what the functions of the sexual organs of children were at that age, and we didn't have any information on that, it might help
Why
answer that.
would you want to know?
I think that's a
Why?
very
What is the
controversial
purpose of knowing
experiment,
that?
though.
But what? Yeah.
I think there's a
What would be
I
the purpose of knowing
So the
that?
short answer is I don't know because I'm not an expert. But my point is, there could be a reason other than you wanting to have sex with kids. Is what I'm
That's
saying.
fair. That's fair. But I, you and I both cannot come up, and it's just two
We're
of
not
us.
experts, though.
Yeah, we're not experts, but as lay people with common sense, why would you need to know that information? Like,
I don't
there's
know.
no basis, there's no reason, there's nothing for why you need to know that.
That would be so. To be fair to the
Even
question,
thinking about it
you
is
would have
like,
to well, you would have to know more about the experiment, what the hypothesis was, what they were trying to find. If you knew that, it would help answer the question, and then you could evaluate whether or not it was something of any scientific merit or warrant whatsoever. That would be a better way to do it than just saying us as lay people who have no expertise in the matter. Why would we do it? Like, I don't know. That seems weird. That seems like a very strange, deviant thing.
it is. There's no basis, none.
But that doesn't follow though. That's the problem. So we got to be more careful with our thinking. If otherwise, we're gonna fall
Not with
prey.
this
We're gonna
thinking.
fall prey to what I think is part of what makes Matt Walsh's documentary biased, which is he's
Again,
actually
and
fundamentally
again,
depending on the layperson who lacks the relevant expertise and who doesn't have any clue why a person would do these things
the
to
intent is to be
to
biased because the left is
presume
biased all the
the
time.
very to draw the same fallacious conclusion you're drawing right now, right? And so we got to be more
Fallacious.
careful than that. Yes, it's fallacious. You don't know anything about the subject matter that you're talking about, and you're
And no one needs,
evaluating it in
but
ignorance.
no one needs to know. No
How
one
would you
needs
know
that
that unless you knew the
information.
relevant information you don't know? That's the
No
problem.
one needs that
You're
information.
saying that in ignorance. You're saying that in ignorance.
Jason,
You're saying that in ignorance, though.
how many times did I call you?
You're saying that in ignorance. I need you to
That's
acknowledge
an
that.
African thing, by the way. Do Americans do that?
I don't know, but you're saying that in ignorance, though. You don't know how
I
relevant
honestly don't
that.
care. Like, I don't care.
Clearly, you don't care. But like, that's not a legitimate reason to disregard that relevant information. That information is still relevant.
Relevant?
Yeah. If you don't know the basis of the experiment at all, you have no context for it, and all
You
you're
know what?
focusing in
You
on
know
is
what?
that kids
You know what? I'm glad
orgasms were
I'm ignorant.
induced in kids, and that therefore makes a person, I guess, a pedophile. If that's all you need, then I guess draw the conclusions you want from that. But like, you have no further context at all. Like,
I don't see why you would need that information, but
to be able to properly evaluate the merits of the lack thereof or the ethics of the lack thereof. That's why you don't want to be willfully ignorant about that kind of stuff because you feel strongly about it. That's a trap. You might draw false conclusions based on your feelings. And I share a lot of the same instincts you do. I'm just trying to be more careful.
So you need to do those type of experiments to form a code of ethics?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say?
I said that you would need to know all of those nuances and details, the questions that I'm asking, in order to properly evaluate the ethics of the experiment or the lack thereof.
What
or
ethics
the merits
are
of the
in an
questions that
experiment
are
like
germane
that?
to the experiment or the lack thereof.
What ethics are being followed in an experiment like that?
So your ability to be able to evaluate whether or not there was an ethical violation medically in an experiment like that hinge on the kinds of questions that I'm asking that you say are not important. You're presuming that it was unethical because it involves inducing orgasms in kids, and that's taboo, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're not in a position to properly evaluate the ethics of the lack thereof of that experiment. I agree with you that it sounds fucked up, and I'm not cool with shit like that, but as a layperson, but I'm also careful enough to admit that I don't have the relevant expertise in that domain or that area of medical science
Do
to
you
be able to properly
believe?
evaluate whether or not there was some line that was crossed. It seems like there was
Do
a
you
line that
think?
was crossed, but I don't know for sure because there's
Do
some
you
things
think
that I
that
don't
we
know.
need every question answered?
I don't know what that means. What do you mean every question?
Do you believe that there? I mean, do you believe that we need every question answered? I'm pretty sure
Um,
in their head they thought of this question and they thought that conducting this experiment would lead to whatever answer they were looking for. So, do you believe that every question that we think of needs to be answered? Do you think that
Probably
there should be
probably
some
not.
level of ignorance when it comes to certain things?
So I wouldn't say that certain scientific experiments should not be conducted or certain scientific questions should not be answered because ignorance is good in some way. I would argue that there are ethical or moral lines that we should draw in terms of what are the kinds of scientific experiments we will
So
allow
yes,
versus what kinds of scientific experiments we
I mean,
wouldn't.
who is even thinking of?
So
Okay, that
so
answers my
what
question.
what 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 might be the case in this instance is that some
You
kind of
just
scientific ethical line was crossed. What I'm saying is you're not in the best position to actually evaluate that properly because you don't know a lot of relevant details. That's what I'm saying. Your moral assessment is going to be potentially off because of the holes in your understanding. Same with me. I understand your instincts though, because I share them. But what the only real difference between you and I is that you're willing to leap to that conclusion and I'm not willing to leap to that conclusion. I think that I need more information, even though I feel very strongly
I mean, I want more
that the
information too
experiment
because I want to know
such
why
as I
somebody
understand it
would
and such as
conduct an
it has
experiment
been
like that.
described seems disgusting.
Okay.
But that's really the only difference between us right now. And you're talking to me like I'm
Is
trying
it
to
exhausting
justify it.
being this fair to both sides?
Sometimes, yeah. You have to overcome a lot of the instincts that I just said that we share. You have to overcome that. It's hard sometimes. So, and
Yeah.
sometimes I lose my patience, and sometimes I have my moments where I'm not as fair as I could be. It's extremely exhausting. It's a lot of work. You got to do a lot of research on both sides too. It's time
Yeah.
consuming.
But I don't care to do that when it comes to certain things. But I mean, I appreciate that people like you exist.
So
Milk
that we
toast.
can do the work for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Because I'm not gonna do it.
that's lazy.
I'll do it with some things, but not this. I don't see the point. Like, because whatever I read is not going to change anything for me. It's just not. And there are a lot of people like that.
Someone call
Not
that
gonna change
dogmatism.
anything for me. I told you how I felt about dogma
No, you
before.
didn't. What'd you say?
I said I welcome it. I'm not a free thinker.
Spoken like a true Christian fundamental. Are you do you consider yourself a Christian fundamentalist?
I don't know enough.
Okay.
I'm still learning a lot.
I'll
So
leave it
no.
alone. I'll leave it alone. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm ready to wrap it up. Are you?
No. But we can.
You want to keep going?
I mean, I like the conversation. I did this is very
I'm gonna
but
try to respect your time, but I got more questions. What you want to do?
you can ask one more question.
All right. How did you feel about the scene where he went to the women's march?
I thought he was being petty.
You thought he was being petty. You don't think there was a point being underscored there?
Oh yeah, I mean there was, but it was a petty point. Like, I mean, he knew the answers, the responses he was going to get from those kinds of women.
What kind of
He
women
knew,
are those?
but he wanted to make sure that that was
What
a
kind of women
point
are
that was
those?
being made in the film.
What kind of women are those?
Feminists.
What do you have against feminists?
Here's the thing. I had to ask myself because I want to do like a post on it at in the future. And I had to think about like whether feminism, that's how I like to view things now sometimes, like is something a negative or positive. And I'm still struggling with whether or not feminism is helping more than it's hurting or vice versa. Um with feminists in particular, I don't have a problem with all feminists because there are some well-reasoned ones, and ones that are not as extreme. I mean, we spoke about this before. There are extremes in every group. Um, I still generally don't agree with the movement, even when I do respect some that are involved in it. But I just don't like where things have headed and are going. I don't like that there's this idea that women don't need men, because I think women do need men, and I think that men need women, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. Like, I personally don't like, in a sense, I do think that women are weaker when it comes to certain things, but I think that men are weaker when it comes to things that we're good at. Like, I mean, I don't need to state the obvious when it comes to that.
What
So,
are things that women are good at?
childbirth,
For those chauvinists in my audience who don't know. You said
cooking,
what?
cleaning.
You just
But
said that men were the best chefs. You just said that men were the best chefs, though.
I was trying to be.
You
Um,
contradicted yourself, is what you did.
no, I didn't. That was on
Yeah, you
purpose.
did.
I didn't. I was
Okay, well,
joking.
give me. I'm seriously asking though. What are things
Yeah.
that women are better
Okay.
at than men?
So obviously, I mean, the obvious thing, the one thing you guys can't do, childbirth.
What do you mean? Some men can
I mean,
give birth.
technically, I mean, that's not an answer.
According to the woke,
Okay.
some men can give birth.
Anyway,
Some men count as people with the capacity for pregnancy,
what
or
are women
or
better at?
PCPs as I like to call them.
I think. Okay. Let me give. I think that because women,
You're not gonna ignore that. That was funny.
I didn't. What'd you say?
I said some men count as people with the capacity for pregnancy, or PCPs as I call them.
You done?
What? Why are you not amused right now? You're
It's not
ruining the
funny.
flow of the show. Don't pull a Matt Walsh on me and look at me like that. This is my podcast.
It's not funny. Anyway,
It was hilarious.
um,
Wait, first of all, do you even know what that reference is? Remember that
yeah,
black woman
yep,
that
yep,
testified in
from
Congress
Columbia Law.
and
Yep,
Senator
yep, yep,
Holly?
yep, yep. I posted about that.
Okay,
Stupid
so
bitch.
why are you acting like that wasn't funny? That was
It
hilarious.
wasn't. I didn't
You
find
have
it
the
funny.
obligation to laugh. You didn't even
Ha
hear
ha
me the
ha ha
first
ha ha
time.
ha.
Now I don't want your fake laugh.
Okay.
What
Anyway,
is that? That
um,
is weird.
that was probably the laugh she gave after she left the courtroom because she's evil.
It was like no, wasn't it the Chamber of Congress or something?
Whatever, wherever they were, it looked like a courtroom. I don't know. Anyway, what was I saying? I think women are better. I think women are better at, like, you know what? Maybe not.
See, I can't believe you. You're a woman. You're supposed to be represented for the women. Why am I going harder in the paint for women than you are?
I would say our emotional nature, I think, helps sometimes, um men that are, try to be as logical as possible.
You think men are logical?
Well, I think I think that the ideal masculine man is more logical than emotional,
Why isn't the ideal woman more logical than emotional?
because I think that women are more emotional. Most women are more emotional than they are logical. Even me,
Ideally,
like, even me, like, I feel like I'm a logical person, but I know I could get emotional. Like, even throughout this conversation, I've gotten emotional, that's what proves my point, because I think that I'm more logical than most women, and I still get emotional about certain things,
I get
which
emotional
is,
about certain things too. Does that mean I'm not a man, or I'm not manly, or I'm not an
I mean,
ideal
I told you, you give like simp vibes.
simp vibes? I know you didn't just come on my show and call me a simp twice. I know you didn't just do that shit. The fuck you mean
Well,
simp
because
vibes?
so
What the
here's
hell
the
does
thing.
that
I
mean?
think I
Nah,
think
explain
that
yourself, goddamn it. What
no,
the
I'm
hell you
not.
mean simp
I'm not.
vibes?
Listen, and this is just me and this is my opinion, Jason. Don't take it to heart. Like I feel like men should be a little more firm and have conviction when it comes to certain things. So the fence
I do
sitting
have
to me,
conviction. I,
the
you
fence
you are
sitting to me.
misunderstanding me so much. I do have
No, I
convictions,
know you have
even
conviction.
though I do I'm in the middle, but I'm not in the middle because I'm afraid or incapable of taking positions. I'm in the middle because what I'm trying to do is be very, very careful about dogmatism, which I'm actually very averse to. So I spend a lot of time evaluating both sides of most issues. And while I'm doing that, I'm usually in the middle, like not taking a position because I'm undecided at that time. But after a while, I start becoming
Can you tell me
more,
something that you are 100% on the side of?
yeah,
An
I am
example.
strictly nonviolence when it comes to protests. There's no excuse under any circumstances for violent protests, period.
Can you give me another one?
I think that um, guns should be just as regulated as cars. A lot of people right of center do not like me for that position, and I'm all about gun reform. Um, the idea that anybody can have any type of gun at any age ever is stupid. In virtue of the Second Amendment, is stupid. Anybody who thinks that is not thinking it through. If you think that it's cool for 7 year olds to walk around with Uzis, you're dumb. That's dumb. There needs to be some kind of reasonable restrictions on who has access to guns. And insofar as that's true, gun laws that are cleverly devised in a way that they're heavily regulated and prevent people from getting them who have mental disorders or who are particularly prone to violence, have a demonstrated history of that, are good laws.
I don't disagree
So I'm
with that.
very staunch on that. So I think that climate change is real. I think anybody trying to deny that human
Ooh, that's why you got into it with
anthropogenic,
Ibrahima.
Ibrahima got mad as hell when I told him that shit.
I mean, but
Anybody who denies
hold on,
anthropogenic climate,
hold on.
the idea that human beings have the ability to change the climate in dramatic ways is not being scientific at all. All the scientific evidence points to that. I'm very, very staunch on that.
Hold on. So he disagreed that climate change is real.
Ibrahima was so all over the place. I don't even know what he thinks. Part of what I think
I
he
think it's
thinks
real. I just don't think
Part
it's.
of what I think he
I
thinks
think
is
it's
that it's
overhyped.
mostly made up, or that part of he said some things that suggest he thinks is exaggerated. He said something to the
It
effect
is
of the
exaggerated.
climate changes, but we have no way of knowing whether human beings can cause it, which is just ridiculous. Like, yes, we do know that human beings can cause it because we know that human beings have emitted
Yeah, I
ridiculous
think.
amounts of
Yeah,
CO2 into
yeah,
the atmosphere, and we know what impact that has on the
yeah.
climate.
Yeah, and I agree. I actually agree with that. But I just I think that yeah, because I mean back in the day, none of this existed. Like we weren't there were no cars to emit all the fuel, and there weren't there wasn't Wi-Fi and all the stuff that we have invented, right? So I agree to that extent, but then I also think that the Earth is is this complex thing that can also heal itself. Like I don't think God would
I mean,
make some again God. I don't think he would make something that can't heal from whatever is trying to destroy it.
did it ever occur to you that the kind of bias that you have in favor of men being, I guess, more capable of like leadership roles and things like that stems from the fact that you think of God as a he?
It probably has occurred to me.
Why can't God be a she? Why can't the person being responsible for vast amounts of creation be a she? In fact, in certain religious traditions, that's precisely why their deities are female, because females are associated with creation and creating the creation of life in particular.
I've never thought of God being a she.
Why not? Who told you God wasn't a she?
No one has ever told me God wasn't a she.
How do you know?
I don't. but it's nice for me to assign God with a gender.
Did it ever occur to you that your conception of gender is shaped by your religious presuppositions?
Haven't I been saying that?
Isn't that a problem?
No,
What if your religion's wrong?
I'll die with it being wrong.
Yeah, but what about all the trans people who negatively were impacted by your dogmatic religious
I'm not
conception of
wrong.
gender? How do you know that?
I know I'm not.
How?
I'm not
But how do you know?
because because two penises cannot create a child. You need one penis and one vagina, right?
Oh my god. Actually, so that combination of the relevant parts of the anatomy that you just named can also fail to produce children. Happened a lot.
I remember saying that when I defined what a woman was. That's why I made sure to include that point. So I don't I'm
No, sorry. The point I just made is that just because you have a penis and a vagina that get together in the usual ways is not going to necessarily
does
produce
not
children.
procreate. I
Not
understand.
necessarily.
I understand, but that's the intent. That's their function, whether
What do
they
you mean
work
it's
or
their
not.
function? Some part of the function is to just have pleasure.
Yeah, I understand that too.
Okay. So why is the function to procreate every time someone has sex as opposed to just have pleasure or bond or express one's affinity for the other person?
I didn't say any of that. Both of
You
them are
said,
functions.
oh, so there's
But,
multiple
but,
functions
in
to
my
this.
but in my mind, first and foremost, sex is for procreation.
Why? Why is that? Why is that the primary? Why does that? Why are all other functions of your one sex of the use of one sexual organs def, subordinate to that one?
Because sex isn't always pleasurable. I don't
Sex
know.
is sex is mostly pleasurable. That's why people do it so much. Part of why.
Oh, okay.
In fact, there are entire industries that have been erected, no pun intended, because of how pleasurable sex and sexual activities are to people. You
I
couldn't
mean,
have you
that's
couldn't
fine.
have the porn industry
It's
if
not
sex
fine, but
wasn't as pleasurable as it was to people.
no, I mean that.
Sex is so pleasurable that people derive
Honestly, I
sex
probably
is so pleasurable that people derive sexual gratification from watching other people do it. That's how pleasurable sex is.
okay. Not denying any of that. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think it is because of my religious,
Yep.
beliefs why I put, procreation first and foremost when it comes to that. I mean, I don't see. I don't view that as like a wrong thing. I think pleasure is great too. Like it's good. Procreation is good too. There's nothing wrong with me putting procreation first, though. I don't think. Just like there's nothing wrong with someone wanting to put pleasure first. I don't disagree with that.
Well, I think you do though.
No, I mean,
If somebody put
I
pleasure
mean,
ahead of the responsibilities that come with pregnancies and bearing
I
children,
don't know.
especially if
I think
you're
for
especially if
this,
you're against abortion, I think that you probably where do you stand on abortion, by the way?
I'm against.
Okay, so I think that on some level you would probably fall into, and this is typical
But
of
you
people
know
who are
what?
Muslim.
There is one bit of nuance. Like even though I'm against abortion, what was I gonna say? No, I don't want to say it. Never mind.
Okay, don't get me canceled.
I'm not gonna say it.
Okay, you better not say it. In fact, you're not allowed to say it.
I just think people shouldn't have sex unless they're ready to have kids.
Thought you wasn't gonna say it.
No, that wasn't what I was gonna say.
Oh, okay.
I said that I think people should not have sex unless they're ready to have kids.
What if they're not ready to have kids, but they really want to have sex, and they take the proper safety precautions?
Then you can abstain.
What do you mean? You can't abstain from sex and have sex. You can't get the physical pleasure of having sex without having sex.
Wait, what was your question?
What if they want? What if they really, really want to have sex, but they're not ready to have children, and they can take the necessary safety precautions?
I mean, biblically, like, no, but I mean, secularly.
All right, I'm not gonna ask you the personal question I was gonna ask you, but I will ask you this: on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best documentary you've ever seen, and one being the
I don't watch
worst,
a lot of documentaries.
what is a woman to you?
I don't know if it's a fair question. I don't watch a lot of documentaries. I actually don't like documentaries.
Okay, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best documentary ever
Oh, if I
made,
were to
and a
just rate
woman,
it on its own,
yeah,
with bias, I would give it an 8.5.
okay,
Without
um,
without my bias, I would give it a 6.
okay. What are some key takeaways that you got from the film?
Um, I think I think the documentary was actually the first time where I found out that how they make bottoms for girls. I don't think I knew that before. That they take part of the what do you call this area? The arm, the skin from the arm to make the penis for them. I actually saw a picture. It's disgusting looking. Um, so that was a big. That was something that I didn't know before that I came away with. Um, to my point before, I think I want parents to be more aware of, or to be aware of if they're not, about those two pseudoscientists, Alfred Kinsey and John Money. Um, Only because I don't wouldn't care if they didn't know about them. Um, but I want them to know about them because this is what they're putting in curricula, like in so they're adding it onto social emotional learning under the guise of social emotional learning anyway. And obviously they're offering a kid friendly version. Um, but I think parents need to be aware that these were the fathers of gender identity and ideology. And if I feel like if they knew what parent those men did, they would be more inclined to speak up and ask their schools, or demand that some transparency when it comes to the kind of curriculum that they're introducing to their kids.
Do you still think that men are more competent than women generally in like leadership positions, given that these two men have radically altered
Yes.
the way we think of gender and
Again,
sexuality?
a few bad apples don't spoil the basket
So
for
you
me.
will not relinquish your conviction that men
Nah,
are
because
inherently more.
I mean there are really good men out there. So
There are really great women too.
yeah, I'm a great woman. So I
But
mean
why do you assume that
that
men are
doesn't
better than women?
mean
I can't get over that. You
you
won't
said
let it
what?
go. Why do you keep assuming that men are more competent than women in leadership positions in particular?
You keep asking me this question and I keep telling you this. I have a biblical understanding of it. Like the Bible explicitly states that the man is the head, the man is the leader.
What if I told you men wrote the Bible?
That's fine.
It's like the
The,
biggest
the,
con
the,
I've
thing-
ever.
but the thing is that the Bible, I think, even if biased men wrote the Bible, human nature still makes it pretty clear that men should be at the helm.
What if I told you Alfred Kinsey and John Money wrote the Bible? Would you believe it then? I'm
That
serious.
is such an ugly question to ask.
It's a clever question. Super
They
clever.
they can't write. They're not old enough to have written the Bible, so
I know,
they're
but I'm saying hypothetically, if they were the authors of the Bible, would you trust it as much?
no.
Why not? They're men, and men are very capable, according to you.
If I knew what I knew about what the experimentations they did, no.
Okay.
Damn, I see where you're getting to. Well, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know. Like
I
I
think there's a
don't.
lot that I actually genuinely, and I'm not trying to insult you. I genuinely think that you are ignorant about the origins of that Bible that you put a lot of
Oh my
authoritativeness in.
gosh.
I'll leave it at that. We can do it another day, but I would
Why are
look
you not?
into it
Why aren't you Christian anymore?
partly because of that. What I just went over, which is I know the origins of the Bible,
What made you uh
and also
curious
there's a
about the
lot of
origins of the Bible?
I'm a philosophy major. I was
Oh,
curious about
that's true.
everything
I
in
mean,
college.
why am I even asking that? I forgot. Yeah, that most philosophy majors are atheists. I'm not saying you are, but they're
Well,
either
maybe
agnostic.
now, but there are a lot of philosophy majors who are, you know, believers in various different religions too.
Yeah, they don't believe in God though.
No, that's not. Well, maybe nowadays, but throughout history, there have been major philosophers who were religious as hell.
Yeah. So what changed?
It's as far as me, or as far as those like the trend of
The
philosophers.
trend of philosophy.
Oh, there are still a bunch of philosophers
Because I feel
who.
like a lot of
There's still a
philosophers.
bunch of philosophers who are religious. By the way, they still exist. I don't
I
know
feel
that they're
like
that popular in America though, but they
when I
still
when
exist.
I read when because most philosophers are like that they're part of like the stoicism thing, right?
That's
No?
one
Um,
tradition, but no, there's a
okay,
bunch of
I'm
different
conflating the
traditions.
two. Never mind. Never mind then.
Stoicism is a like family of philosophical. Well, Stoicism is kind of like a major philosophy in a certain time period that was popular in certain regions of the world for sure. But there's a bunch of different there's a bunch of different philosophies like that.
Okay, then never mind. Because I was gonna say that when I read certain things from like when I read those stoic quotes, they're very reminiscent of like biblical scripture. So
Yeah, the Platonists. There was a version of Platonism that was very in alignment with Christianity, and then in the medieval period, you had a lot of Christian philosophers for sure. Um, let's see. One of the biggest ones was
sorry, would you judge me? Are you judging me because of my willful ignorance?
you know, what do you mean judging you?
Like, does that change anything, your view of me, because I'm willfully ignorant? Because I am. I'm willfully ignorant. I just to me there are things, and my sister acts. We talk about this sometimes from time to time because she's not as Christian. She doesn't identify as a Christian yet.
I don't
She
think
believes
willfully
in
ignorant
God.
is the best way to describe you.
You said
But no,
what?
I don't. I don't think willfully ignorant is the best way to describe you.
Oh no, of course not. But I'm just saying, as an aspect, like knowing
I think
what you.
you're. I think you're a bit dogmatic in your Christian beliefs, but I
Yeah,
not as dogmatic as other as like stereotypical Christian fundamentalists who demonize people who don't believe what they believe and tell them they're going to hell and
yeah,
shit.
I would never do that
So no,
because
I mean
because
I'm
God
I'm
gives us
the reason
free
why
will.
I'm patient
Why
because
would we
I
got
have
to take
so
it
many
from
people in my family who are like you, so I'm used to it. One, two, I used to be really religious, so I understand it. So it's easy for me
Oh,
not
I
to
wish I
judge.
met religious Jason
Why?
just to see what you would be like. Because I feel like you would be so like I don't want to say that. Never mind.
All right, whatever. Well, we're gonna
You,
wrap it up.
I know you wouldn't be on the center.
I wasn't on the center when I was religious. I was
Yeah,
very much conservative,
yeah,
but I wasn't really that political though. So I was conservative in the sense of I had religious beliefs and subscribed to principles from my faith, but um, I wasn't really religious at all. That wasn't emphasized in my family at all. So I would have disagreed with a lot of things that come from the left in virtue of the fact that it contradicted with a lot of moral precepts that came from my faith for sure.
mhm.
And I would have viewed them as secular and therefore unholy or something like that, something akin to that. I used to think like that, but I wasn't really that religious.
See,
I was
I
that
try not to
political.
use and you know, even though I am Christian, I really do try not to use words like that. Like I that's what I mean, but I don't want to I to me it's wrong of me to call someone like unholy when I know I have my shit, like even cursing, right? Um that I have like yeah. Would
I,
you do you think you would ever go back to Christianity?
Probably not, but I don't know. When I was sick in the hospital, I thought I was going to die. I listened to a lot of gospel music. It made me feel better. And I think I prayed for the first time in a long time. I was really scared. So
Interesting how people run back to God.
if the circumstances were right, I could see it because I reverted back to really the only thing I kind of learned how to deal with a situation like that where I might die.
Is there a reason why you didn't continue? Because you weren't dying, I guess. You didn't die.
Um, I think I think the biggest reasons was because of all of the reasons why I got away from it in the first place, all of the philosophical contradictions that I saw in the faith. Um, I no longer think the Bible makes sense to be authoritative. It has contradictions in it.
So God, you only use God.
I don't like the dogmatism associated with certain kinds of Christians for sure.
So
And
you don't believe in God at all?
I've become accustomed to thinking in ways that are markedly different from the ways I used to think as a Christian, and I think I can lead my life just fine that way. I don't know. I don't pretend to know whether or not there is a God. So you can call me an agnostic. I guess that would be the technical term for it. I don't know.
I guess I'm
Um,
wondering why you ran back to God when you thought you were dying, but
Probably out of habit. I don't know. It's a question. I mean, I'm being candid about it. I I just felt like I was dying. I didn't know what to do. It's kind of desperate.
mm,
I think that was probably the main impetus or motivation for it, and that was what I had learned from a very young age to do in those kinds of situations. So that's a big part of it. It was interesting. It was kind of shocking that I felt inclined to do those things. I haven't felt inclined to do those things in a long time.
yeah, it's really
So
interesting.
it's a big part. What it I think what it revealed. I think an obvious thing I can conclude, although I still have questions, is that what it revealed is that those instincts are deeply ingrained in my psychology from a very young age, which makes sense because it was inculcated in me since I was really young. Like I was brought up since I was as long as I can remember. We went to
Yeah,
church, so it was just an interesting thing. You scare the shit out of somebody. Certain facets of themselves come out, and
yeah.
that was part of what came out of me. So that's interesting. So it's still in there somewhere, I guess. Those instincts,
Mm.
those inclinations, those urges, those desires. I was listening to gospel music earlier this week just because I haven't heard the songs in a while, and I was just in the mood to hear it again. I really miss listening to gospel music. Every now and again, I'll throw on some gospel music, and it just reminds me of like my childhood. I have a lot of fond associations with it.
It's good. I like that. I want to say this. I mean, I won't forget saying it, but I want to say it now. Like this was really. I wanted to thank you again for, you know, allowing me to come and speak to you today. Every every aspect of the conversation was really it was great. It was amazing. Um,
Don't
maybe I
call me no simp no damn more.
oh, I mean I was joking. Like I don't think you're
I know
simp.
I'm playing. I'm playing too.
But I'm actually almost glad. Well, I am glad that, especially from about this last part. I mean, the whole conversation was nice, but this last part was really nice because I feel like I just like the what it was. I don't. Sometimes I don't have words, but I like where conversations go. Sometimes, like where you don't expect them to go, because I obviously didn't think we were gonna um, start talking about religion like that. But I liked hearing that from you because I was like, it's funny because there's a part of me that likes to see, and I don't know if you thought that was like a vulnerable moment. I don't know, but to me, it felt a little vulnerable.
A little bit. I mean, every time I talk about almost dying, it's pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's funny because it's kind of a struggle for me because on the one hand, I think really respect men being vulnerable, but I do think there's a time and a place for that vulnerability because I look at there's a small part of me that looks at when men are vulnerable as like them being weak.
That's why you call me a simp, huh?
No.
That
But
is, you called me a simp twice on my show.
oh my God,
You're canceled
never
from the
gonna
Black Muze
forget it.
Podcast for life now.
Do you remember the thing that I told you I will always remind you of? That one thing I can't even remember now. You're so lucky. Oh, you remember it?
Mhm.
I don't. I wish I did. I wouldn't say it though, but I want to remember. But no, I appreciate this entire conversation. This was really great. I would love to come back and talk about some other things.
We
I
can talk
think
about
I'm
religion next time if you really want to, because it seems like you do.
talk about what?
Religion.
I don't want to talk about religion.
Okay, never
It's
mind then.
it's funny because only because I'm not. So I'm like you. I mean, we were very religious when we were younger, or at least my dad was,
Mhm.
and we kind of just had to follow whatever my dad was doing. But I really didn't understand that everything that I was doing, and I went through all the motions like catechism, confirmation, baptism, all that, not really understanding what it was that I was doing. So because of that lack of understanding, I kind of left for a little bit. I was still spiritual, I guess, in a sense,
Mhm.
but now I'm back. And I'm glad I'm back at it. But then there's still so much for me to left for me to understand. And I don't think that I'm seasoned enough to have conversations about certain things when it comes to Christianity. That's why I wouldn't say that I'm like I think you said fundamentalist. Like I
Mhm.
feel like as a fundamentalist, you have to know scripture. You have to know, and I don't know it. I don't remember. I only have like my childhood uh memory. I haven't gone back and read everything um
Mhm.
to really have a full understanding. But that's why I love it so much because I can go back and and read things like I do it now. I go back and read things and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't understand it before, but I'm so glad that I'm grown enough now to understand what it is that I'm reading and actually implement it in my life.
Mhm.
So
All right, I'm gonna wrap up this episode because otherwise you're gonna be here for another 2 hours.
yeah, no, sorry.
Uh, but go ahead and say
Thank you.
your goodbyes to the audience though.
Um, thank you guys. I noticed that I'm sinking in my chair.
Yeah, you were. I wasn't
Um,
gonna say that either.
thank you guys for tuning in to what is this called?
Bruh, the
Black
Black
Muze
Muze
Podcast.
Podcast. I didn't even know what show was
Sorry.
on. The
Don't edit that.
disrespect,
That's funny. I
the
think people will laugh at
dis
that.
the disrespect. I ain't laughing. It's my don't forget the name of my
Your
show while
audience
you on
will.
it and shit.
Your audience
You can
will.
forget it
Anyway,
off the camera, off air. Go ahead. Take
you need
two.
the candid moments,
Take two. Take two. So I can edit that out.
No, no, don't edit this for real. I'm gonna say it again. What's your podcast called again?
All right, you're canceled. You're canceled right
But
now.
yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing me on. This again was a great, great, great conversation. I got a little passionate, but that's what happens when you care deeply about certain things. You guys, please follow his page, subscribe, do whatever you got to do to support this good, clean brother. Okay. And yeah, I mean, do I need to? Oh, follow. You can follow me on Instagram. That's my handle right there. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you ever want to reach out, you can reach me there. You can reach him here. And
Where are they gonna reach me?
on YouTube. Oh, he has an Instagram. What is your Instagram again? Is it Jason Muse?
Black Muse.
Black Muse. Is that your real last name?
My real last name is Muse, but it's
Oh,
not
I didn't
spelled
know
the
that.
same.
Oh, I thought that was like your persona.
I mean, nah, it's who I am. It's a way of life.
Okay, true, true.
All right.
But yeah, thank you guys. And this was great. fantastic.
I agree. Shout out to you. I'm gonna bring you off now, and then I'm gonna close up. Stay in the back, and I'm gonna talk to you offline.
Okay.
All right, people. That has been the Black Muze Podcast. I don't know why I didn't think about doing this a long time ago, but I'm about to display my link tree. Bow. You can reach me on my link tree. You can add me on all my socials. You can subscribe to all of my podcasts. I'm everywhere podcasts are being streamed. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Google Podcasts. I'm on Amazon Podcasts. I'm on iHeartRadio. I'm on Pandora in this bitch. I'm everywhere. I'm even on SoundCloud. I don't even understand how that shit works, but I'm on them. I'm on that bitch though. So go ahead and add me, like, subscribe, share, and please support your brother as best you can. Every little bit counts. Until next time, this has been the Black Muze Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Muse. Peace.